Chapter 33. Chapter 33. Li Lingtian walked toward the library chamber at a leisure pace. The winner of first place would be rewarded with an onyx tier skill, but this skill could only be cultivated by a warrior spirit powerhouse. Even if a warrior disciple had more than enough spiritual stones, they could not access this onyx tier skill. Once he arrived at the library chamber, Li Lingtian explained his purpose of visit. However, the old man glanced at him before a strange look appeared on his face. "Are you the Li Lingtian who has won first place at the tournament this time?" The old man spoke quietly because he was filled with shock. During this period, rumors about Li Lingtian had been spreading throughout Skycloud Sect like wildfire. Li Lingtian, who used to be a peripheral disciple, was now a Tier 9 warrior who had managed to defeat the Tier 6 warrior spirit, Duanmu Qing. Despite Duanmu Qing's possession of Star Radiant Body, he was still killed by Li Lingtian. Li Lingtian was a powerful genius who possessed the Flaming Sacred Body, Ice Vitality Warrior Soul, and Ice and Fire Warrior Souls. Not only were all the disciples in such awe of him, but he was also used as a yardstick for the others in the sect. "Yes, I am that disciple," Li Lingtian replied respectfully while he waited for the old man to let him pass. Since the old man was guarding this place, Li Lingtian had to respect him even though he was here to retrieve his prize. "Not bad. You may enter." The old man nodded. This young disciple of 15 years old had managed to possess the Ice and Fire Warrior Souls and kill a Tier 6 warrior spirit powerhouse. Li Lingtian was definitely a superior existence in every regard. Li Lingtian immediately walked up to the second floor once he entered the library chamber. This was because the Onyx tier skills that were cultivated by the warrior spirit disciples were kept there. 9 Split Fist and Onyx tier inferior skill. Great Wisdom Scripture and Onyx tier inferior skill. Oh. In comparison to the lower levels, the second floor skills were much stronger. Although there were significantly fewer skills and techniques here, all of them were of Onyx tier. Li Lingtian started to search the area. Since there was no time limit here, he could look for his skills without worrying at all. It took him 2 whole hours to look for a skill. In that time he had seen almost all of the skills here and noticed that they ranged from Onyx tier inferior, moderate, and superior skills. Even though there were only a few types of Onyx tier superior skills, he did not possess the requirements to use these skills or techniques. Onyx tier moderate. Heaven Falls Earth Rends. Oh, this looks interesting. It's a large-scale attack that is quite similar to the Ice Vitality Divine Fist. But their attributes are different because this is a pure strength-based attack. "It's you." Li Lingtian picked up the Heaven Falls Earth Rends and looked at it before he nodded happily. Soon after that, he took this Onyx tier moderate skill and walked downstairs. An Onyx tier moderate skill like this could definitely increase his strength significantly. Once he had chosen his desired skill, he immediately returned to his room to meditate and cultivate while time passed quickly. "Oh, Uncle Master Bai, I've discovered the whereabouts of the Ice and Fire Ring in Skycloud Sect." A Tier 8 warrior disciple stood up respectfully on a mountain outside Skycloud Sect. The warrior spirit powerhouse who was on the opposite side glanced at the disciple before he looked at the disciple with a stern look in his eyes. "Did you say that you found the Ice and Fire Ring in Skycloud Sect? Tell me what happened." If Li Lingtian was here, he would definitely recognize this elder. During his battle with the warrior spirit powerhouse Yang Chongxiao, he did not even hesitate to send the disciples below him to their death just so he could obtain his Ice and Fire Ring. 5 days ago, a Tier 9 warrior disciple unleashed the Ice and Fire Ring during his battle with the warrior spirit powerhouse at the Skycloud Sect Grand Tournament. The Ice and Fire Ring was so powerful that it could not even be destroyed by an ordinary spiritual equipment, the Overlord Spear. The warrior disciple explained everything that had happened when Li Lingtian used the Ice and Fire Ring 5 days ago. As he remembered the look that Li Lingtian gave him that day, he was filled with fear once again. "In that case, we must think of a way to draw this warrior out if the Ice and Fire Ring has fallen into the hands of the Skycloud Sect. We must obtain the Ice and Fire Ring. This Ice and Fire Ring harbors a huge secret. Remember not to act rashly and alert the enemy." Bai Yunhe sounded incredibly enthusiastic. Once he had discovered the Ice and Fire Ring's location, he could think of a way to obtain it. After all, he had spent half a year searching for it. Don't worry, Uncle Master. Li Lingtian will be participating in the training on Hidden Dragon Isle this time. When the time comes. A sinister smirk appeared on the warrior disciple's face, and a dark aura filled the depths of his heart as he recalled Li Lingtian's gaze. If Li Lingtian did not die, he would have to live with this darkness. You should go back. When he enters Hidden Dragon Isle, someone else will retrieve the ice and fire ring and bring it back. Bai Yunhe looked excited now. When he was done speaking, his figure flashed as he rushed toward the far end of Sky Cloud Sect. The warrior disciple then scanned his surroundings once before he carefully returned to Sky Cloud Sect. Oh! With each passing day, Sky Cloud Sect's numerous disciples underwent cultivation peacefully. Only a few of them were anxiously making preparations for the opening of Hidden Dragon Isle after 100 years. Hidden Dragon Isle was a legendary existence within Eastern Spirit Greenland. The spiritual chi there was very intense and the area was filled with countless treasures, medicinal supply, and demonic beasts. Unfortunately, there was always a price to pay. After all, a place that was filled with treasure would also have powerful demonic beasts or unknown risks. That day, Li Lingtian left his room and walked confidently toward the Inner Sect's square. Since he was an Inner Sect disciple now, there was no need for him to live on the periphery. However, he had no time to move to a new house because he had been busy healing his wounds and cultivating for these past few days. Besides, he had to enter Hidden Dragon Isle in 10 days, so why would it matter? Hence, it would only make sense for him to move to his new home when he returned from Hidden Dragon Isle. Numerous disciples had gathered on the square, while more than 10 warrior spirit powerhouses were standing on the stage. A warrior king powerhouse and the mysterious, rarely present sect leader Ling Tianfeng were also here. Seconds ticked by before all the disciples who were participating in the training on Hidden Dragon Isle finally arrived. The 200 disciples lined up in a square array with Li Lingtian standing at the very front. Sky Cloud Sect and the Divine Martial Continent had made this rule whereby only the strongest powerhouse could stand at the front. Besides, it was also a symbol to mark his position. Although Li Lingtian was merely a Tier 9 warrior, his strength was unimaginably terrifying. He ranked first among the disciples in Sky Cloud Sect because he had managed to suppress and kill Tier 6 warrior spirit. Junior brother Ling Tian. Senior brother Ling Tian. When Li Lingtian arrived, numerous disciples greeted him politely, and with respectful looks on their faces. Even the 12 super genius disciples greeted him respectfully as Senior Brother Li. When they saw him, Li Lingtian had instantly become the main focus. The elders and other powerful individuals who were standing on the steps smiled at him as well. This showed that a powerhouse would always be popular. Since everyone is here, it's time for us to travel to Hidden Dragon Isle today. Hidden Dragon Isle is located in the borderless sea that is 10,000 miles to the south of Sky Dragon Empire. It also happens to be in the center of the 4 great empires. Elder Bai Yin, Elder Qingping, Elder Lu Feng, and Elder Zhu Tian will be leading the expedition to Hidden Dragon Isle this time. You must listen to the 4 elders' instructions during your journey. You will spend half a year in Hidden Dragon Isle. After those 6 months, you will be automatically sent out. We don't think that all of you will leave from the same place, but we have an inkling of where you will leave from. Every disciple must bring along a responsive jade slip. Once you're on Hidden Dragon Isle, you will be able to sense the other disciples from your sect, as long as you're within a 100-mile radius of each other. If you encounter danger while you're outside, you should detonate the jade slip. The elders from your sect will immediately rush over to the place where the jade slip exploded. Ling Tianfeng relayed several matters regarding Hidden Dragon Isle. All of these were basic things. However, only warriors who were below 30 years old were allowed to enter Hidden Dragon Isle when it opened its doors once every 100 years. Naturally, these disciples were entering that place for the first time. Moreover, it would be the only time in their life where they were allowed to enter Hidden Dragon Isle. Li Lingtian briefly sized the other disciples before he realized that he had seen all of them in the hall before. Aside from the disciples who ranked among the first 100 in the tournament, the rest of them were at most Tier 5 or 6 warrior spirits. Furthermore, there were only 6 Tier 9 warrior spirits. It seemed that Sky Cloud sect truly deserved its reputation as one of the big 4 super sects in the empire. It was also extraordinary for someone under 30 years old to become a Tier 9 warrior spirit. When Ling Tianfeng introduced them, the 4 elders stood up and waved at the disciples below them. The elders would be waiting for these disciples to come back in half a year. They had spent half an hour organizing everything before Ling Tianfeng, and the others left the square. In the meantime, the 4 elders had also allowed the 200 disciples to start preparing themselves. Although they were warriors, a 10,000-mile journey would take 10 days even if they traveled without stopping. Brother Ling Tian, please be more careful at Hidden Dragon Isle. Meng Meng will be waiting for you to return. When Tang Ziming approached Li Lingtian and quietly murmured, her eyes were swollen red. She knew that it was extremely risky to enter Hidden Dragon Isle, because there was a 90% chance of dying. Furthermore, all the geniuses from the 4 great empires in Eastern Spirit Greenland would be competing against each other at Hidden Dragon Isle. The girl was worried about Li Lingtian, but she did not want to limit his future because she knew that a good man would aspire to travel far and make his mark. Yes, I know. But you don't have to worry because it's merely Hidden Dragon Isle. I'll appear right in front of you again after half a year. When Li Lingtian saw how Tang Ziming looked, his heart was filled with a deep longing for her that lasted for some time. However, he had to become stronger because of this world's respect for the powerhouses. If he did not have power, his destiny could be easily thwarted by other people. The young man could not give up this opportunity because Hidden Dragon Isle was an important training ground. So, he smiled and consoled his fiancée for a while before he passed a storage sack to her. The storage sack contained several spirit binding pills, vitality pills, spiritual stones, and the Kylan sword. Li Lingtian had no use for these items now, but the items were suitable for Tang Ziming because she was a warrior. Both of them whispered sweet nothings to each other and chatted while the other disciples waited. At this point in time, nobody dared to complain about Li Lingtian. In the end, Shweta and the other 2 came over and greeted him as well. An hour later, a gigantic swift boat appeared on the square. The swift boat was more than 300 feet in size and it resembled an airship. Chapter 34. Chapter 34. What an impressive swift boat! When Li Lingtian saw the swift boat, his heart screamed with astonishment, while he also felt extremely curious. He wondered what this vehicle was relying on to fly, about the swift boat's speed and how it was even able to fly. The 4 elders hurriedly entered the swift boat the moment landed before the remaining disciples walked up excitedly as well. Li Lingtian took one last glance at Tang Ziming, Shweta, and the other. Then, he finally turned around and walked toward the swift boat. Once he entered the swift boat, he saw the 4 elders placing a fist-sized spiritual stone into a card slot. The intense spiritual chi that this spiritual stone was much stronger than that of mediocre spiritual stones. It's a premium spiritual stone, Li Lingtian thought to himself in surprise. This also meant that premium spiritual stones existed. If an ordinary spiritual stone was worth 100 mediocre spiritual stones, then a premium spiritual stone would be equivalent to 100 ordinary spiritual stones. In other words, a premium spiritual stone could be exchanged for 10,000 mediocre ones. After all, a spiritual stone would be more precious when its quality was better. However, nobody would exchange a premium spiritual stone for a mediocre one, unless they were an idiot. The elders had exhausted a premium spiritual stone just to power this swift boat for one trip, but they had a good reason to do so. For the sake of the Sky Cloud sect's glory for the next 100 years, they had no choice but to bring out this premium spiritual stone. Once the premium spiritual stone was placed inside the card slot, the swift boat suddenly produced a faint glow before that ray of light eventually enveloped the entire vehicle. Rise! Immediately after Elder Bai Yen had commanded and cast the spell quietly, the swift boat quickly rose from the ground. At last, it was floating through the air without stopping at all. The swift boat quickly flew out of Sky Cloud sect and in the blink of an eye, it had left that place. It's almost as fast as the planes in the previous world, Li Lingtian thought to himself. Deep down he was extremely shocked when he noticed its speed. Although the swift boat was slightly slower than a plane, it was still very stable. Besides, he could see everything outside. More than 200 people were standing inside the swift boat and looking at the clouds that were moving behind them. They had even traveled past the sky mountains. Although they were moving quickly, they could not hear the sound of the wind at all because the strong gale was blocked by the faint shield of light on the outside. This is probably what it feels like to wield a sword as though you were flying. As he watched the swift boat cruising along, Li Lingtian felt moved. He recalled how he had watched someone on television talk about wielding a sword with such precision that you felt like you were flying, and he realized that this was probably what they meant. It was impossible for the warriors in Divine Martial Continent, who were ranked lower than warrior ascendants, to steer an aircraft through the sky. They could only rely on powerful bursts of strength to leap around and on spiritual equipment to fly. If one was a powerhouse who had achieved the warrior ascendant level, they could stand up in midair and suspend themselves there or choose to freely travel between the sky and land as they pleased. Li Lingtian felt incredibly curious when he started to look at the scenery outside. This was the first time he had left the Sky Cloud sect and properly entered this world. He looked down at the villages of various sizes below him. The young man could also occasionally see cities that were quite similar to the ones that he had read about in books. However, this sense of curiosity gradually vanished. So, he sat down cross-legged before he started to cultivate. The other warriors were also doing their own cultivations because they were still in Sky Dragon Empire's realm. Since the distance between Hidden Dragon Isle and Sky Dragon Empire was more than 10,000 miles, they would need 4 or 5 days to arrive at their destination despite using a swift boat. They flew for a day before they finally left Sky Dragon Empire's realm. While they were in the sky, they would occasionally encounter super powerhouses who were wielding swords as they flew. They had even encountered several clans from the sects who were on the swift boats as well. Li Lingtian thought highly of those warriors. Although he was very certain that Sky Cloud sect was one of the big 4 super sects in the Sky Dragon Empire, he was also aware that it was not the most powerful sect. There were many other clans and sects who were incredibly powerful despite being hidden for generations. Li Lingtian came upon this realization when he saw the disciples below him. Although the sky was filled with warrior spirit powerhouses who were flying around, he had only seen a few ordinary warriors. There were even several Tier 8 or Tier 9 warrior spirit powerhouses among them who were below 30 years old. As time passed, the group from Sky Cloud sect had encountered many more powerhouses. The other sects had more than 200 disciples each, and all of them were warrior spirit powerhouses. Bai Yan, I have never imagined that you'd be the one leading the group to Hidden Dragon Isle this time when it opened up. A loud voice rang out and caused everyone's eardrums to hurt as the sound vibrated among them. Li Lingtian and the others had noticed the other gigantic swift boat in the sky long ago. There were more than 200 warrior spirit powerhouses in the swift boat and 4 warrior king powerhouses. The person who spoke was a Tier 6 warrior king powerhouse who had a hint of disdain on his face. There was also a tinge of ridicule in his tone. Even though Bai Yan was also a Tier 6 warrior king, Sky Cloud sect was not as powerful as the other group in terms of their overall strength. Long Hao Yan, I can't believe Radiant sect allowed you to lead the group. Could it be that the sect had no other choice? Bai Yan did not display any sign of weakness. It was obvious that neither party was willing to lose to the other, because they were both one of the big 4 super forces in Sky Dragon Empire. As for the other party's 4 warrior kings, one of them was a Tier 6 warrior king and the other 3 were Tier 5 warrior kings. Meanwhile, Bai Yan was a Tier 6 warrior king, and the others in his group were either Tier 3 or Tier 4 warrior kings. Bai Yan, we haven't seen each other for so many years, but your tongue has grown so sharp. Unfortunately, I can't tell if you've gotten any stronger. Long Hao Yan looked slightly angry, but he knew that it was inappropriate for him to lose his temper in front of all these disciples. Furthermore, numerous super forces were gathered on Hidden Dragon Isle now because it was open. If the Sky Dragon Empire's forces were not united, it would reflect badly on them. Why don't we try it and see? Bai Yan stood up on the swift boat. Since the 2 swift boats were still flying, it was obvious that the men would not fight each other now because they would still require a 2-day journey to get to Hidden Dragon Isle from here. Why must both of you insist on arguing every time you meet? At this moment, a quiet female voice echoed from the sky. The voice rang out when another gigantic swift boat appeared before the crowd. All the disciples turned to look at the swift boat that came from behind them. Anyone brave enough to scold two warrior king powerhouses was definitely not an ordinary person. The disciples could see that numerous warrior spirit disciples were standing inside the swift boat, while two young women stood at the head of the vehicle. Both of them were dressed in thin robes that gave off a gentle aura. However, Bai Yan and Long Haotian had terrified looks on their faces when they saw those two young women. "Hello, Celestial Fairy Bai Ling and Celestial Fairy Qing Ling of Misty Pavilion." Bai Yan calmed himself down before he greeted those two young women. Li Lingtian instantly noticed that awkward look on the other man's face. This made Li Lingtian curious about the women who had managed to fill Bai Yan and Long Haotian with such dread. They must be unique individuals. Celestial Fairy Bai Ling and Celestial Fairy Qing Ling are more than what meets the eye. Despite their appearances, they're actually on the same level as Elder Bai Yan and the others. Not only are they warrior king powerhouses, but those two celestial fairies are also tier 9 warrior kings. Zhou Yun explained softly to Li Lingtian when he noticed the curious look on the latter's face. Frankly, he was also curious about his junior brother, Li Lingtian. Zhou Yun felt rather fearful because Li Lingtian was a tier 9 warrior despite being 15 years old. Furthermore, he had even killed Duan Muqing, who was a tier 6 warrior spirit. Oh, is that so? No wonder. Li Lingtian nodded to show his gratitude toward Zhou Yun. It had never crossed my mind that those two celestial fairies would lead the group from Misty Pavilion. I believe Misty Pavilion is very confident this time around. Long Haotian spoke loudly. Indeed, the difference between tier 6 and tier 9 warrior kings was worlds apart. However, since they were all super forces of the SKYF Dragon Empire, it was obvious that these sects would not have any internal strife with each other at this moment. I've heard rumors that there are several super geniuses in Radiant Sect who have already stepped foot in the Warrior King realm. When Celestial Fairy Qing Ling's exquisite eyes glanced toward the Radiant Sect's swift boat, all of Radiant Sect's disciples could suddenly feel a malicious aura, as though a venomous snake was staring at them. None of them could hide their cultivation levels because Celestial Fairy could see everything clearly. Celestial Fairy Qing Ling's see-through technique has improved again. Long Haotian was incredibly gleeful when he heard Celestial Fairy Qing Ling had praised the disciples of his sect. Luckily for him, Celestial Fairy Qing Ling and the other woman could not enter Hidden Dragon Isle anymore, because they were already over 30 years old. Otherwise, Radiant Sect would be in deep trouble even if there were 10 of these sections. Li Lingtian had a great deal of respect for Misty Pavilion and the Radiant Sect's cultivation levels because they were much stronger than the Sky Cloud Sect. When he compared Sky Cloud Sect to the other two groups, he realized that there was a significant difference between them. This was particularly true for the 3 Tier 9 warrior spirit geniuses in Radiant Sect. However, Li Lingtian could not determine the cultivation level of those two white-robed women from Misty Pavilion. Haha, your group was moving at a rather impressive speed as well. You arrived slightly earlier than us. A hearty chuckle echoed from the faraway sky while the Warrior King powerhouses were chatting with each other. A huge swift boat suddenly tore through the sky and arrived. This swift boat was much larger than the one that Misty Pavilion owned, and it looked like a gigantic warship. Tianhe, you old fart. It seems like you weren't far behind. Bai Yin seemed more relaxed this time. His expression also looked more pleased now as he turned to the swift boat in the distance and yelled loudly. Haha, long time no see, Bai Yin. Your cultivation level is still the same. The gigantic swift boat was suspended in the air before a mysterious old man in a loose red robe exited from the vehicle. The man seemed like a ball of fire because his eyebrows, beard, and hair were all a fiery shade of red. Once the red-robed elder left the swift boat, he moved through the air and finally stopped in front of Sky Cloud Sect's swift boat. All of the disciples and warrior kings were instantly stunned when they saw his actions. They also had terrified expressions on their faces now. Warrior Ascendant. He has become a Warrior Ascendant. Tianhe, you old fart. You've achieved the Warrior Ascendant stage. Celestial Fairy Qing Ling Bai Yan Long Haotian and the other Warrior King powerhouses looked completely dumbfounded. When they finally spoke out of shock, there was still a look of disbelief on their faces. This person's arrival had caused a bigger stir than when Celestial Fairy Qing Ling and Celestial Fairy Bai Ling arrived. Haha. I successfully became a warrior ascendant after I received a 3,000-year-old white cloud flower. The red-robed elder chuckled loudly after he spoke. There was a huge distance between warrior kings and warrior ascendants. In this case, the difference of one tier was equivalent to the difference between heaven and earth, or the gap between each realm. This did not apply to warrior ascendants only. Even if there was only a one-tier difference between warrior kings, that could mean a world of difference for them. In that sense, the difference would be even more apparent between warrior ascendants. Chapter 35. Chapter 35. The 3,000-year-old white cloud flower. You've been to Sky Devil Valley. Both Bai Yan and Long Haotian were astonished, even more so than the time Tian he became the warrior ascendant. Sky Devil Valley, the forbidden ground of Eastern Spirit Greenland, was not only dangerous but difficult to gain access. Like Hidden Dragon Isle, Sky Devil Valley would only open at a specific time, or else no one would be able to enter. However, they knew Tian he had a piece of treasure that was able to grant him entry. I'm much older than you all, and I've only 5 years of my life element left. If I don't achieve the warrior ascendant level, I can only wait to perish. Tian he sighed. Warriors spent their time battling amongst the heavens, earth and mortals whilst racing against time, chasing after their life elements. Even if one became the undefeated warrior king, one could only crumble into a pile of yellow sand by the time they reached the end of their life. The stronger one cultivated their warrior strength, the more life elements they would gain. The warrior apprentices, warriors, and warrior spirits were basically normal humans. It was only when you reached the level of a warrior king that you would be able to extend your life element to 200 years. As long as one achieved the warrior king level and kept themselves safe from harm, one will get to live up to 200 years. That was twice the life of an average person, and it was a reward tantalizing enough to drive everyone crazy to achieve attainment. While a warrior king could live up to 200 years, a warrior ascendant could live up to 300. The rule for the following levels goes by this: the stronger you get, the longer your life. Legend says that warrior gods could live up to more than 1,000 years. It remains a legend, but it was a dream that one could never give up on pursuing. Oh right, I forgot that you are almost 200 years old. If not for being a warrior ascendant, you would have perished long ago. Though since you're one now, you still have about 100 years left. Bai Yin let out a sigh as well. He and Tian he were good pals, but they had quite an age gap. Tian he was an old man who had lived for more than a century, while he and Long Haotian were only in their 60s. Alright, let's discuss for now so that when we meet the other sects from the 3 empires, we wouldn't be seen as losers. There's news that quite a few warrior king powerhouses have emerged in the 3 empires. Tian he was the strongest of them all. As a warrior ascendant powerhouse, he was qualified to be in command of the entire sect. It was only natural that everyone would follow him. The warrior kings, Celestial Fairy Qingling, Celestial Fairy Bai Ling, Long Haotian, and the rest from Sky Cloud sect grounded their respective swift boats and began the discussion. According to a reliable source, the sects in the other 3 empires have at least a warrior king level disciple. On top of that, there are also 4 great mysterious clans that are observed to be equally strong. What's scarier is that we have no idea how great their underlying power is. Tian he revealed the news he got from his own sect. Green Jade sect was not only part of the 4 superpowers in Sky Dragon Empire, but was also the leading sect amongst the 4 in terms of strength. With Zhou Yun's explanation, Li Lingtian began to understand the distribution of powers within the Sky Dragon Empire. Amongst the 4, Green Jade sect was the strongest, followed by Misty Pavilion, Radiant sect, and Sky Cloud sect. Green Jade sect and Sky Cloud sect were on friendly terms, and the same went for Radiant sect and Misty Pavilion. At the same time, numerous superclans sought connections to these 4 sections. When we were at Eastern Spirit Greenland, our Sky Dragon Empire was the weakest. I believe after this trip to Hidden Dragon Isle, there will be some changes within the Sky Dragon Empire. Radiant sect's Long Haotian was serious as he uttered these words, his facial expressions gravely solemn. Though Radiant sect had a few powerful Tier 9 warrior spirit disciples, they were nothing when compared to the warrior king powerhouses. It is terrifying to know one could achieve the warrior king level before the age of 30. These warrior king disciples entering the hidden dragon isle are definitely unrivaled. Celestial fairy Qingling lost her initial calm and started worrying about her disciples at Misty Attic, but more importantly she was worrying about the resources that were with them. If those were taken away by the other three great empires, the powers of the Sky Dragon Empire will be greatly suppressed. Does senior brother Tianhe have any good ideas? Bai Yan dared not address Tianhe as old B** star anymore, even though they were quite friendly. This was a world that respected the powerful, and since Tianhe's warrior ascendant level up, their social distance grew further as the power gap between them both was greatly widened. What ideas are there to be had? A warrior spirit will stand no chance against a warrior king. It's suicidal. Wait, there are also warrior-level disciples? Damn it, Bai Yan, what the hell is Sky Cloud Sect up to? Tianhe flew into a rage when he saw Li Lingtian and his dozen warrior-level disciples. He was undoubtedly triggered because, during this critical juncture, the Sky Dragon Empire's powers must stand united, yet Sky Cloud Sect had brought along his warrior-level disciples. As someone with a Firepath warrior soul, Tianhe burst into flames out of rage. Everywhere within 100-meter radius was momentarily turned into a flaming abyss that had numerous disciples terrified as beads of sweat rolled off their bodies. Much to everyone's surprise, there was a warrior-level disciple who did not budge nor show any level of discomfort. Quite the opposite. He even seemed to enjoy the surrounding fiery aura. What the hell? A flaming sacred body. Tianhe threw a sharp glance at Li Lingtian and roared excitedly as if he saw some great treasure, and then slithered forwards to him. The disciple hereby meets his senior. Li Lingtian's core trembled. The warrior ascendant powerhouse's strength was immense, and it was not something a warrior like himself could withstand. Even a smidge of the warrior ascendant's repressive vigor would be above him. Be my disciple. A simple sentence as such had everyone witnessing the scene dumbfounded. Countless warrior-level disciples had envious looks on their faces at the offer. One could die happy if they were ever taken in as a disciple by a warrior ascendant powerhouse. One would be showered with resources, skills, and techniques. Not to mention, no one would dare pick a fight with a disciple of a warrior ascendant. What are you doing? Tianhe, you old B** starred. The four elders Bai Yan, Qingping, Lu Feng, and Zhu Tian vigilantly rushed forward to stand in between Li Lingtian and Tianhe. Li Lingtian was the genius disciple that Sky Cloud Sect had waited for thousands of years. If they allowed the old B** star to snatch such a talent, Sky Cloud Sect's leader and the other heavenly elders would definitely skin them alive. They would dare disrespect Tianhe just to protect this warrior-level weakling? The warrior kings and their warrior spirit disciples from the three other sects were astounded. Tianhe was taken aback as well. The four elders' first reaction was to bolt over and safeguard this warrior-level disciple. One would be a fool to not know what was happening here. The other masters who had looked down on Li Lingtian's warrior-level cultivation felt their world turning upside down. The warrior ascendant wanted to take this warrior as a disciple, and yet the few elders stopped him from doing so. How great could this warrior be? The air was mysteriously still as everyone stared at Li Lingtian and Tianhe. What's your name? Would you want me as your master? You with the flaming sacred body, if you would take me as your master, I'll bestow upon you the heaven and earth conflagration. Tianhe ignored Bai Yan and the other elders. He asked away with a prideful smile, his eyes fixed on Li Lingtian. The warrior ascendant was being nice. Not even a warrior spirit or warrior king would reject his offer, let alone a warrior. Heaven and earth conflagration. The earth tier inferior skill. Heaven and earth conflagration. It's an earth tier skill, the heaven and earth conflagration. A few warrior kings exclaimed in surprise. Their warrior spirit disciples might have not known what that was, but they knew heaven and earth conflagration was Tianhe's greatest skill, a proof of his earth tier inferior level. Even if they were the four great sects, none had such a skill in their possession. Even if they had, it could only be cultivated by a warrior ascendant powerhouse. Everyone became even more envious than ever, but they all felt happy for this warrior. His status was elevated in a snap and he was about to be granted an earth tier skill. Li Lingtian said something that startled everyone. Dark shadows loomed across Bai Yin and the other elders' faces. Even though Sky Cloud sect was great, a disciple with a flaming sacred body would have a better advantage if he took up the heaven and earth conflagration skill. The elders thought Li Lingtian was bound to take up this offer. Chapter 36. Chapter 36. The disciple is deeply flattered by your acknowledgement, senior. Li Lingtian bowed respectfully at Tian He. One knew that they could never bear the consequence of offending this warrior ascendant powerhouse, especially when he had a firepath warrior soul and a nasty temper. This disciple has a flaming sacred body and is indeed envious of the senior's heaven and earth conflagration skill, but as a disciple of the Sky Cloud sect, I can't betray them. Can one still be a man of integrity if they betray their own sect? If there ever was a disciple as such, he'd be nothing but bad news even if he was a genius. I wouldn't want to be such a person even if I had a low cultivation level. Such words of integrity moved the hearts of every other warrior present. It was not easy for a warrior to stand up to a warrior ascendant powerhouse. Sects detested traitors in the divine martial continent. If there was ever one present, orders will be given to pursue them to their deaths. Even so, the disciple is ever so intrigued by senior's heaven and earth conflagration. Li Lingtian spun the topic around and met Tian He's eyes unwaveringly. Having said all that, he is still tempted by the inferior skill. What a shame. How brazen. I thought he was a righteous man, but he turned out to be so shameless. Oh. Numerous warriors despised Li Lingtian after they heard him. Anger grew among Sky Cloud sect's disciples, but they dared not speak before Bai Yin and the elders did. Haha, CK off y'all. This is his choice and a good one I'd say. Tian He roared. His grin deepened as he looked around indifferently. Silenced by fear, all the other warriors looked down, trying to avert their gaze. They all cursed Li Lingtian quietly for being so spineless and brazen. Those scornful looks did not go unnoticed by Li Lingtian. He seemed calm and appeared to be unaffected. If senior has been cultivating the heaven and earth conflagration skill, you should have quite some confidence in handling blazing flames. Li Lingtian was making his own plans as he eyed Tian He. An earth tier inferior skill was exactly what he was looking for. He was still cultivating Flaming Divine Fist and had not found other suitable firepath skills. His ability would be brought to a whole new level if he got his hands on heaven and earth conflagration. That's for sure. One with a firepath warrior soul is considered the strongest among the other warriors within the same tier. Even if I'm just a tier 1 warrior ascendant, I wouldn't necessarily lose to a tier 3 warrior ascendant. Tian He was startled. He did not know what Li Lingtian was thinking to boast about his own cultivation level. Since the disciple also has a firepath warrior soul, it would be great to experience Senior Tian He's flaming strength and receive some guidance. Should the senior outperform the disciple, the loss will be accepted with grace and the senior will be my master. However, if the senior loses, then the senior shall bestow heaven and earth conflagration upon this disciple. This disciple wonders if Senior Tian He would take up this challenge. Li Lingtian was all relaxed and cheerful as he uttered his words in a breeze, only to stop and look at Tian He for a reply. What? Everyone was stupefied and they shot looks of disgust at Li Lingtian. A warrior who wanted to compete against a warrior ascendant on flaming strength. If there was no master and disciple business taking place, one would think Li Lingtian had either lost his mind or was a natural fool. Tian He wanted Li Lingtian to take him as a master, but Li Lingtian had falsely rejected him. Was Li Lingtian looking for a way out through this competition now? If he lost, Tian He would become his master. If he won, the heaven and earth conflagration skill would be his. The former could only happen without a doubt as there was a great disparity between the strength of a warrior and a warrior ascendant. Ha! Ha ha! Great! Tian He burst out laughing. In a world where the strongest were respected, it was wise for one to change their actions accordingly. You're a warrior. I wouldn't want to take advantage of you with my cultivation level. I'll only use a tier 9 warrior level's flaming strength to compete with you. Remember, you will obtain heaven and earth conflagration if you win, but if you lose, you'll acknowledge me as your master. Tian He's face brimmed with delight. A disciple with flaming sacred body was worth nurturing as he had unlimited future potential. The warrior ascendant did not want to bully a junior in front of so many too. However, everyone knew that even if a warrior ascendant capped his strength at a warrior's level, a warrior still would not be able to stand a chance in defeating them. This head-to-head challenge on flaming strength was fully reliant on one's experience and perfection of the skill. The situation was unfavorable towards Li Lingtian. The disciple is grateful that the senior remembers. Enlighten me then, senior. Li Lingtian beamed and smiled from ear to ear. It was very much interpreted as a dishonorable act by the other warriors. Tianhe, on the other hand, had a sudden jolt of apprehension upon seeing this curious smile. Was he being fooled? Yet, he would not believe that this warrior could beat him. Right, here we go. Tianhe suppressed his true qi to a Tier 9 warrior's cultivation level right after his words landed. At the same time, a shot of truly perfected flaming qi blasted towards Li Lingtian. The flaming strength morphed into a fireball that was 3 feet in diameter. Despite being capped at a Tier 9 warrior level, it had the power to melt every being on Earth. This is the warrior ascendant. How freakish is that? Even after suppressing his cultivation level, not even a warrior spirit can beat this, let alone a warrior. Sigh, you can't tell whether he's just courting death or plain shameless. He must be shameless. How wild to think that a warrior can beat a warrior ascendant. Oh. All the warriors were deep in discussion, eyes glimmering with fright. Their sight never moved away from Tianhe's fireball. Ha! Li Lingtian's face was solemn. He elevated his true qi to the peak of a Tier 9 warrior and initiated heaven and earth reincarnation. Fire Dragon's heart rose from his dantian and channeled through his arm. It left his palm and revealed its shape in the air. All the plants within a 110-yard radius wilted into ashes as an exquisite little fire dragon appeared in the sky. The heat was so intense, even a warrior spirit level disciple had to enter cultivation mode to protect themselves from the heat. Bai Yan and his elders were pleased to see Li Lingtian's flaming display. Tianhe was just being manipulated by him all this while. He had a plan so well thought out that he even took the warrior ascendant's moves into account. He had the fire dragon's heart, and no one in the same tier could ever defend against that. The fire dragon's heart. Fire dragon. It's a fire dragon. Long Haoyan, celestial fairy Qingling, and the other elders cried out in disbelief. The scornful disciples from 4 great sects were now bewildered. Fire dragon's heart? You piece of T, you dare mess with me. Something was off as Tianhe felt Li Lingtian's flaming qi. No warrior-level disciple should ever be that strong, even with a flaming sacred body. This qi made him tremble too. The situation was finally made clear to him when he saw the warrior's fire dragon's heart, but it was too late for him to react. As Tianhe's great fire orb darted towards Li Lingtian, the fire dragon's heart swooped toward the orb. As soon as they met, fire dragon's heart devoured the fireball like a delicacy in no time. Rumble, rumble. The air was in a constant stir and the earth rumbled. In a blink of an eye, fire dragon's heart had completely consumed the fiery sphere, and was then reclaimed by Li Lingtian. Bai Yan and the rest of you be *stars. You let him master the fire dragon's heart, and play dumb in front of me. Fine. Whatever. I can't care less about you all. Tianhe was furious, but he had to contain it due to his social status. A loss was still a loss. It was of course humiliating to lose to a warrior, but this was not the case. He lost to Fire Dragon's heart instead. That flaming qi was horrifying indeed. I didn't expect that a warrior could contain such a strong flaming qi. Even I wouldn't be able to handle such flames. Humph, of course you can't. You're only a Tier 6 warrior spirit. It's not possible even if you cultivate for 100 more years. Even the warrior ascendant's flames have been devoured. What more a nobody like you? The astounded warriors woke up from their daze. What happened just then felt unreal. A warrior-level disciple had mastered the mystical fire dragon's heart, and swallowed a warrior ascendant's flames. He never thought of wanting Tianhe as his master. He was just eyeing the senior's earth tier skills. Truly shameless. Shameless? Why don't you give it a try, you piece of *T? At least he has what it takes. You're not even worth scraps. Some of the warriors finally came to understand that this disciple had no intention of making Tian-He as his master. He was eyeing Tian-He's earth tier skill all along. The surprised warriors looked at Li Lingtian, who had sat down to meditate. He was rendered motionless temporarily after summoning the fire dragon's heart and downing a warrior ascendant's flaming chi. What he did could backfire if he were even slightly careless at that point. I'm stuffed. All the warriors were unable to react to Li Lingtian's words. After he took in the warrior ascendant's flaming chi, he claimed that he had overeaten. They were all speechless. Chapter 37. Chapter 37. Senior, let's talk about our bet. Li Lingtian stood up, suppressed the flaming chi within him and returned Fire Dragon's heart to his dantian. He collected himself and restored balance to his body after using heaven and earth reincarnation. He secretly thought to himself that he would never have dared to use Fire Dragon's heart if not for the situation. Li Lingtian's plans almost backfired, and that left him with traces of distress. Young sport, you have a future ahead of you. I hope that you won't disrespect this skill. Also, you must not touch that thing within it before you reach the warrior ascendant level, or else even the gods won't be able to save you. Tian-He unwillingly withdrew a flaming red jade slip from his storage sack. He carefully advised Li Lingtian before tossing it over to him. The future seemed bright for this warrior with a flaming sacred body. If he could master the skill contained in the jade slip, his capability would improve in leaps and bounds. However, there was something inside the jade slip that even Tian-He dared not meddle with. He hoped that Li Lingtian would not touch it too because it could lead to the disciple's destruction. Thank you, Senior. Li Lingtian used his divine mindfulness to access the jade slip. He relied on his cultivation of heaven and earth reincarnation and other experiences to quickly verify the jade slip's authenticity. While he was in there, the warrior also saw a powerful seal, which he assumed was the terrifying thing that Tian-He had mentioned. Upon completing his checks, Li Lingtian bowed respectfully at Tian-He. This warrior ascendant powerhouse was a man of his word, and turned out to be quite a candid character too. The other warriors' minds were blown. They had witnessed Li Lingtian claim his winnings and heard Tian-He praise him after that. One should definitely feel proud to receive praise from a warrior ascendant powerhouse. They just never thought that this warrior-level disciple, whom they looked down upon all this while, turned out to be so powerful. Alright, we're done with that, so let's get back to discussing this hidden dragon owl business. If Sky Cloud Sect has Li Lingtian entering as well, there wouldn't be a problem exiting. You just need to be careful. Tian-He swiftly switched the topic and began the discussion on Hidden Dragon Isle. He looked over to Li Lingtian with a disheartened smile. It took a strong one to know one, and although this disciple was no warrior ascendant, he will definitely be a powerhouse in time to come. After that, the elders and masters of Big Four sects decided that all the disciples from their sects were to refrain from fighting against each other. They should extend a helping hand whenever they could, and when they could not, no internal fighting should ensue. The three other empires and the other superclans were opponents to the Sky Dragon Empire's forces. A few other masters had also decided to pass this message on to the other clans in Sky Dragon Empire. Radiant Sects Changtian, Bomu, Xiaotian and Lu Xinjuan. Misty Pavilions Luoyu, Luyi Dongfang Tian Hua Xiao. Green Jade Sects Murongjiu Qing Fengting, Zhou Qinglong Lu Suifeng. Sky Cloud Sects Li Lingtian, Zhou Yuan, Dongfang Qingyu Chang Yan. They are the core elite disciples of Big Four sects. All the disciples from these four sects, if you did not meet anyone from your own sect, you are required to stand by all these disciples whose name I have just called and remain united as one. 1. All disciples are to attack those who would start an internal fight and put an end to them. Even if they successfully exit Hidden Dragon Isle, or if they're geniuses, the Big Four sects shall cripple their cultivation and expel them from the sect. After the warrior kings from Big Four sects had their discussion with Tian-He, they gave each other a clap as a gesture of swearing unity among their disciples. Anyone who intended to fight each other would be killed. This would suffice in uniting the disciples who were about to enter Hidden Dragon Isle. The elders and the warrior ascendant powerhouse had even given each other a clap to affirm their unity. That was enough to prove their determination. Among all these disciples, Li Lingtian was the only warrior. Dongfang Qingyu was a Tier 6 warrior spirit while the rest were all Tier 9 warrior spirits, with some only one step away from the warrior king level. Most of them thought Li Lingtian was just lucky to defeat Tian He's flaming strength. They dared not offend Li Lingtian though, because they would all be dead if he were to get angry and summon Fire Dragon's heart. Big Four sects flew for half a day before they finally met the rest of Sky Dragon Empire's families and forces. Although not as strong as Big Four sects, they still had quite a number of first-rank genius disciples. All Sky Dragon Empire's disciples were made to understand that the Empire must unite during this moment as Tian. He explained Big Four sects' decisions to them. Their greatest enemies were the threat in Hidden Dragon Isle, and the super geniuses from other empires. Rumble, rumble. Roar, roar. After flying for a day, the swift boat contingent came to borderless sea. The sounds of pounding waves were especially loud and swift boats were in every single corner of the sky. What a magnificent view indeed. Li Lingtian watched as countless swift boats flew past each other in the airspace. He thought of the World War scenes he had seen on television in his previous life, the skies densely packed with fighter jets. However, those fighter jets were not as huge as these swift boats, nor were they as majestic. There were huge airships among the swift boats at borderless sea. Each airship was as large as 10 swift boats with proportionally stronger horsepowers as well. Hundreds of swift boats and airships were seen circling over borderless sea, but no one landed their vehicles. All of a sudden, great vigors quaked the sky and tore the surrounding air into shreds. The presence of Tian He the warrior ascendant superhouse was already intimidating enough. However, as they approached borderless sea, there were 30 other warrior ascendant superhouses just like him. Sky Dragon sect only had one warrior ascendant, which was Tian He, who was considered a newbie in that tier, while the other super forces were all led by warrior kings. The sects of other empires were all led by warrior ascendants though. There was a huge disparity between their strengths under such a comparison. Damn it, I'll have my own fleet of airships next time. Li Lingtian thought to himself as he looked at all the swift boats and airships in front of him. All of them were only here to show off. What the heck? There were hundreds of such vehicles and tens and thousands of powerhouses. Everyone was just minding their own business on their swift boats, engaged in their own meditation and cultivation, and waiting for the opening of Hidden Dragon Isle. Once you've entered Hidden Dragon Isle, search up north. Bai Yin keenly made a voice transmission to Li Lingtian. After they came to borderless sea, he kept imparting his knowledge on Hidden Dragon Isle to Li Lingtian and the other 3 disciples. He never entered Hidden Dragon Isle, but the others from Sky Cloud sect had. A few generations of powerhouses had gone in and came out successfully, and their recollections of experiences were passed on. All the best treasures were located up north in Hidden Dragon Isle. When the time came, those that were teleported out of there usually exited from the north too. Li Lingtian listened and made mental notes of what Bai Yin said. At the same time, he too instructed the other disciples about the few important medicinal supplies and demonic beast materials that they needed to get at Hidden Dragon Isle. As days passed, the tidal sounds grew louder while the skies grew darker. The fog had blanketed all of borderless sea, and that greatly restricted visibility. On that very day, a purple electric arc which was over 3 yards long punctured the sky and hit the sea with great destructive force. Rumble, rumble. There was a deafening explosion and the earth began to shake. This was heaven's prestige, and it made all the warriors tremble with fear. Everyone who was brought in front of heaven's prestige was bound to be struck down by terror. Warrior spirits, warrior kings, and warrior ascendants alike. All the swift boats sped backward after the thunderous strike of this electric arc. They all observed heaven's prestige from afar as countless bolts of lightning cracked and struck down from the skies, followed by booming thunder. The whole world seemed like it was coming to an end, which was frightening for all the warriors as their facial expressions were as dark as the skies they were under. It went on for 10 minutes until the lightning finally stopped and the fog in the skies cleared up. It was sunny again. One then realized that a huge rift had appeared in the sky. It was about 1/3 of a mile wide, and its length was 10 times its width. A flood of white light spilled out of the rift like the silver river from the 9th heaven. 1. The white light had a diameter of around 110 yards. As soon as it landed straight into borderless sea, heaven and earth fused to become one. Move! As the white light settled, all warrior ascendant powerhouses from the Big Four sects came forward to surround it and started hurling spells at it. A massive formation soon rose to encircle the white light. A large green formation disk was tossed into it. Upon completion, all warrior ascendant powerhouses backed away swiftly and stood on the sea banks. Get ready with the onyx crystal. Bai Yin yelled at his Sky Cloud sect disciples. The seniors from other sects too were getting their disciples ready with onyx crystals, which represented a place in the formation. One could never enter the formation without the onyx crystal. It was the brainchild of the 4 great empires and a few super families. There were only 10,000 spots for all. No more, no less. Li Lingtian took the onyx crystal out from his storage sack and grasped it firmly, waiting to get into the formation. Quite a number of warriors had already flown towards the formation. Those with the onyx crystal entered without any difficulty. Upon their entrance, the white light drew them into the rift with a pulling force, and they were then out of everyone's sight. Rumble, rumble. 5 minutes had passed. An explosion cracked out from the rift. A warrior had turned into ashes. It was all because your sect's disciple is over 30 years old. 10% of your next entrance quota shall be taken away. A Tier 4 warrior ascendant powerhouse bellowed across the skies as soon as he saw what happened. He glanced over sternly at an elder from a Southern Empire family, who was quick to admit his mistake and accept the punishment. No warrior above the age of 30 could enter Hidden Dragon Isle. An immediate death would await them at the rift. Li Lingtian had a rude awakening as he observed the whole episode. Anyone who was 30 years old would be reduced to ashes. No one would dare to mess around. F***CK. In his previous life he was 20 years old and 15 in this life. He really got screwed up big time. Although he was worried, Li Lingtian chose to put up a brave front. As the rest of Sky Cloud sect's disciples headed toward the formation, he sped up to follow them, his eyes gleaming brighter than ever. Chapter 38. Chapter 38. Li Lingtian was in shock while he stood in the formation. The white light immediately entered his body, and he felt like he had been submerged into a hot spring. The white light had transported him to the rift before he could even react, but as he got nearer, the light started to tremble. Li Lingtian was frightened to death. He was already well past 30 years old with his previous and current life added up. The opening seemed to sense that something was off, but it was unable to decide on his age. Swoosh! The rift's trembling ceased. Li Lingtian's body was forcefully thrown out and went straight through the opening. After regaining his ability to react, he realized that he was amidst a grassy plain. The warriors who had yet to enter the formation felt the opening tremble too. However, since no one was killed like in the previous situation, the other warrior ascendants had nothing to say. Ha 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 ha. You're here at last. You've kept me waiting for the past 3,000 reincarnation cycles, and you're finally back. It was then when a faint voice came from the depths of Hidden Dragon Isle. All of Hidden Dragon Isle began to shake with uneasiness as if it was at the brink of destruction. This only happened within a split second, but all the warriors who entered Hidden Dragon Isle had sensed the destructive chi. When faced with this chi of doom, they were all as helpless as a baby. What's going on? Are we going to die? What a terrifying chi. It is the ruination chi, the raging chi. The warriors on Hidden Dragon Isle were petrified. As they looked at the sky, their gaze was restless and fearful, as if the world had come to an end. Hidden Dragon Isle calmed down in an instant. It made what happened before seem like a passing illusion where none of it was ever real. So this is Hidden Dragon Isle. Li Lingtian glanced around using divine mindfulness to take a good scan of the surroundings after he descended. There was not a single soul nor demonic beast within a 3-mile radius from him. After he peaked at being a Tier 9 warrior, his divine mindfulness was strong enough to scan up to 3 miles, which was similar to a Tier 9 warrior spirit. A usual Tier 9 warrior's divine mindfulness could only see less than a mile, but he could see up to 3 miles. He could not have achieved this level of success without having the heaven and earth reincarnation's power and a double soul. What a rich spiritual chi. I should look for a place to rest first and get my direction sorted out. Li Lingtian was surprised to see how substantial the spiritual chi was. It was so rich that his cultivation could speed up by just being there, which was much faster than consuming a grade 1 vitality pill. Even if he did not manage to get all the medicinal supplies and treasures, the trip would be worth it if he were to cultivate for half a year. The rich spiritual chi was beneficial for the herb's growth, and so precious medicinal supplies were plentiful. One would be out of luck if they found none. That being said, Li Lingtian flew to one of the mountain summits in a swift move. It was necessary to take a break before planning the next step, especially when one knew nothing of the place, which was filled with unknowns. Li Lingtian meditated for a full hour in a cave. He then opened his eyes and strolled out with a confident smirk on his face. Last time, when he competed against the warrior ascendant powerhouse Tian, he using flaming strength, he used Fire Dragon's heart to his advantage and got his hands on heaven and earth conflagration. It was risky indeed, but Li Lingtian benefited from being able to further perfect his flaming strength. His mastery over Fire Dragon's heart had improved, and it would not take long for the conception of his flaming divine fist to occur as well. On top of that, he also cultivated heaven and earth conflagration. Li Lingtian's cultivation barely scratched the surface, but an earth tier skill itself carried a great deal of power. Even at its surface, flaming divine fist could not match up to it even at its best. A display of heaven and earth conflagration could turn the surrounding area of a little more than 100 yards into a sea of flames. Mighty fires would lick the skies, and not even a warrior spirit powerhouse could get away from it. What was more horrifying was that all demonic beasts and warriors that happened to be within that vicinity would have their true chi absorbed by the warrior using the skill. This way, the user's true chi would be replenished, and heaven and earth conflagration would be fortified. The decrease of a warrior's speed and cultivation within an attack zone would be one of Li Lingtian's trump cards. Upon exiting the cave, Li Lingtian activated Divine Mindfulness. 1.5 miles away, there were 2 Tier 3 warrior spirit masters fighting each other. He wrinkled his brow ever so slightly. Rumble, rumble. At Hidden Dragon Isle, those 2 warriors spared no mercy for each other. They wanted to get it over and done with before it attracted other warriors, which would mean more trouble. Swoosh! A small sound zapped through the air. Li Lingtian descended and observed the fight between the 2 warriors from afar. His darting sight found a sprig of 100-year-old herb which emitted spiritual chi growing from the ground. 100-year-old moon falling grass. Great, I'm keeping it. He applied breeze technique shortly after he spoke. This century-old sprig of herb was an important ingredient for the refinery of a grade 3 pill. It would be a waste if he did not take it. Li Lingtian got hold of the century-old moon falling grass in the blink of an eye. The 2 warriors were still fighting with all their might. He safely stashed the herb and grinned while he spectated the ongoing brawl. Oi, half-breed! Leave the moon falling grass alone or else I'll tear you up. Yang Ming flew into a rage when he saw that moon falling grass had been picked up by a warrior-level disciple. They were risking their lives battling each other, but a rubbish warrior took it to his advantage. You piece of sh*t. I'll definitely kill you today. Zhou Qing stopped fighting and glared at Li Lingtian as well. The mediocre spiritual equipment he held was emitting gentle swirls of spiritual chi. An urge to kill rose from the bottom of his heart. You 2 pieces of rubbish are just risking your life over a sprig of a century-old moon falling grass. Get lost. Li Lingtian icily uttered his words. He recalled that both of them were not from Sky Dragon Empire. Even if they were from Sky Dragon Empire, he would still get his hands on the things that he wanted. Sky's ablaze sword. 100 kills fist. The 2 warrior spirits were stunned. Who would have thought that a warrior-level disciple could be that arrogant when faced with 2 warrior spirit-level warriors? To say that they were infuriated was an understatement. They leaped out of sight and bolted over toward Li Lingtian at full speed. Strong attacks were coming at him with merciless force. They reckoned this rubbish warrior could be slashed dead in one blow. Die! Bright moon and soft breeze. Flaming divine fist. Li Lingtian was all smiles when he saw the 2 Tier 3 warrior spirits coming at him with their attacks. He raised his arm and an astounding sword appeared in his hand, which he then swung out with a light flick of his arm. There was a sliver flicker of the sword's reflection in the air. At the same time, Flaming Divine Fist was thunderously rolled out. Bright Moon and Soft Breeze were as fast as lightning while Flaming Divine Fist was invincible. Slash. Clank. Rumble. Astounding Sword was a strong and mighty peerless grade spiritual equipment. The existence of its grade was unparalleled among spiritual equipment. Li Lingtian's display of the Bright Moon and Soft Breeze technique made it even more powerful. Sky's Ablaze Sword was cut into half. Blood started trickling through a cut on Zhou Qing's neck. His widened eyes that were once filled with horror had now turned into despair. Flaming Divine Fist was served in just a punch. Its mighty flaming strength was supported by Fire Dragon's heart's undercurrent power. Yang Ming was thoroughly scorched. 2 Tier 3 warrior spirits, huh? Not bad. Just that one could only be asking for death when faced with a peerless grade spiritual equipment and Flaming Divine Fist. Li Lingtian's gaze swept across his fist and his peerless spiritual equipment while he commented indifferently. Those 2 Tier 3 warrior spirit masters died before they could let out a cry, just like weaklings. Let's not be wasteful here. Li Lingtian mumbled softly while going through Yang Ming and Zhou Qing's storage sack. His methods were so skillful one could almost believe he was used to killing and looting. Swoosh! With his storage sack well packed, Li Lingtian employed the motion skill and dashed away from the scene. He was lost in the bushes within a flash. The 2 warriors shall be buried here forever. Li Lingtian flew closer to the ground while using divine mindfulness to monitor his surroundings. If there were strong demonic beasts ahead, he would then take a detour. He took a glimpse at the blazing sun in the sky, picked a direction and headed toward it. One day passed ever so easily. Not only had he killed 2 warrior spirit powerhouses, but Li Lingtian also killed 2 Tier 2 level 6 demonic beasts. He did not need to search for materials anymore given his gain today. All that was left to do was just to harvest its internal vitals. In this strange and unpredictable forest, anyone would be a fool to not look for a safe place for themselves. Li Lingtian had a better understanding of Hidden Dragon Isle after sprinting around for a day. Hidden Dragon Isle was a lone island and overall a huge one. 10,000 warriors entered this space, yet he only met 2 of them today. One would have an idea on how huge the isle was by then. It was impossible for anyone to be transported into Hidden Dragon Isle with someone they knew because the transmission was random, unless there was a coincidence. Growl! Deep into the night, the isle became a heaven for demonic beasts. The howls and growls echoed loudly within Hidden Dragon Isle. Li Lingtian found a cave on a cliff and decided that it would be his hiding spot. Chapter 39. Chapter 39. Sitting with his legs crossed, Li Lingtian was fully immersed in cultivating heaven and earth reincarnation and gaining insight on heaven and earth conflagration. Damn, don't they all come in pairs? Moments after he sat down to rest, a swoosh came out from nowhere. Li Lingtian had a vantage point over the cliff and could see 2 shadows, one chasing after another at a distance. He could not help but find it amusing. He had only met 2 people fighting over an herb after he entered Hidden Dragon Isle. Not even a single soul was seen for the rest of the day. There was someone at last, actually 2 of them, and it seemed like they were also in a brawl over something. However, he was all by himself cultivating alone. Put down the green onyx fruit and I will leave your corpse intact. A booming voice blasted through the atmosphere. As soon as it stopped, a tall, burly figure leaped into the air and jumped right in front of the person who was running away. It's her. What a coincidence. The 2 warriors came near the cliff, and Li Lingtian caught a good glimpse of their faces. There was a tall and well-built man who seemed to be in his mid-20s that was a Tier 8 warrior spirit, who held an ordinary grade spiritual equipment. 5 yards away, this man was faced by a petite lady in her early 20s. She was an unmatched beauty, yet she looked pitiful as her fair, glowing face had smudges of blood at the corner of her mouth. Louis from Misty Pavilion. Li Lingtian did not expect to see Misty Pavilion's Louis, who was one of the sect's core disciples. a Tier 6 warrior spirit disciple who made it to the core. That puzzled him because Misty Pavilion was not short of Tier 9 warrior spirit disciples. It was Bai Yan who told him that Lui's true identity was not to be underestimated, as the elders of Misty Pavilion were also clueless about her origins and her background. Dream as you wish, but the green onyx fruit will not be yours. Her voice was sweet, melodious, and had a mystical quality about it. Her pretty eyes glanced around for an escape route as she knew she could not fend off the Tier 8 warrior spirit powerhouse. If that's the case, I have both you and the green onyx fruit then. Mighty Storm Cloud Sword Technique. Su Tian had a sly grin in his face. No one could possibly remain untempted by such an attractive woman. Since there was no one around, he would be filled with joy if he could get his hands on green onyx fruit and have his way with this beauty while he was at it. As soon as he finished what he said, Su Tian displayed Storm Cloud Sword, the ordinary grade peerless equipment that he was holding. At that instant, the sword's glints swirled around and swiftly formed into a six-hilt sword of silhouettes. The winds and clouds rolled around with imposing vigor in the atmosphere. Li Lingtian, who stood atop the cliff, was deeply shaken. This Tier 8 warrior spirit had demonstrated Mighty Storm Cloud Sword technique from Tianjin Empire's Divine Sword Sect. It was so powerful that its strength could easily surpass his vast obscure extermination. Senior sister, would you share one of your green onyx fruit with your junior brother? Li Lingtian transmitted his voice to the panic-stricken Lu Yi. He was determined to get the green onyx fruit, but it might not be a good idea to seize it from her. He also did not want Su Tian to lay hands on this pretty lady. Skynet shield block. Lu Yi was terrorized to the core as she looked at the mighty glints of the blade. Su Tian had been hunting her down for hours, and she only managed to make it this far using the numerous treasures in her possession. Seeing that her opponent had started hurling such brutal attacks, Lu Yi was out of ideas and had no choice but to use her last piece of treasure. The faint voice transmitted to her at that instant made her even more petrified with the realization that her situation had just become worse. Rumble. The few strokes of sword silhouettes hit Skynet shield with a thunderous bang. Lu Yi was violently pushed a few yards back. Skynet shield was losing its glimmer. This peerless grade spiritual equipment had blocked an attack from Mighty Storm Cloud Sword technique and was wounded. You have quite some treasures with you. A peerless grade spiritual equipment, it would be of nice use to me. Let's see how you'll hold up to this. Su Tian was actually taken aback by the fact that his Mighty Storm Cloud Sword technique, which had always been invincible, was blocked by his opponent's peerless grade spiritual equipment. He had been chasing after her for a while, and she had an endless hoard of treasures. Greed rose from the bottom of his heart. All right, if you eliminate him, I'll give you the green onyx fruit. Lu Yi started talking toward a direction where there was no one, which freaked Su Tian out. He quickly thought that Lu Yi was trying to deceive him. As expected, Lu Yi turned around and ran away. You'd think I'm easily tricked, but I'm not a kid. I'll let you know what I'm made of. Su Tian was convinced that Lu Yi intended to deceive him as she was already running away. He did not hesitate to use motion skills to pursue her. That was when a fatal chi came down on him. Vast obscure extermination, time to die. A strange, destructive blade aura descended from the sky at top speed as soon as those ice-cold words were said. The blade aura transformed into countless silver needles that tore through the air and went toward Su Tian's direction. There was a tinge of vast obscure extermination chi in the air that made Su Tian quiver involuntarily. Mighty Storm Cloud Sword technique. 1,000 shadows of sword flickers. He bellowed and swung his storm cloud sword around rapidly. Numerous blade shadows shot toward the incoming attack. Clink, clatter. Rumble. The air was in a constant quiver as the clashing of blade shadows and silver needles brought about a lot of clatters. A giant boom marked the end when the two hefty blade auras collided. The explosion threw Su Tian out of sight and created a great hole in the ground. Li Lingtian descended, looked at Lu Yi who was standing afar and grinned ever so slightly. It's you. Lu Yi saw Li Lingtian's figure and recognized him straight away. This teenage boy with a seemingly rubbish cultivation level was the one whom the warrior ascendant powerhouse wanted as a disciple. She was nonetheless comforted to see someone from Sky Dragon Empire. Blurg. Somewhere far away, sounds of blood being spat out could be heard. Su Tian was pale in the face while he spewed a mouthful of blood. He was also in deep shame. He was from Divine Sword Sect, which was a sect that specialized in sword cultivation. No one could ever compete with them in Eastern Spirit Greenland, and yet he had lost to a blade aura today. As this was not a fighting ring where he could just admit defeat to save his life, he was more disappointed with his loss. He gave an icy stare at the teenager in front of him and was at a loss for words. A 15-year-old teenager who only had a warrior cultivation level. He also noticed that the weapon held by the boy was an unexpected peerless grade. Mighty Storm Cloud Sword Technique. Destroyer Sword. I'll serve you your death. A destructive force tore up the air in the skies. All the plants and boulders were transformed into numerous sharp and glinting blade shadows. Every drop of blood seemed to have left Su Tian's face. He was suffering, and his eyes were filled with hatred. He's a Tier 8 warrior spirit. Beware, Junior Brother Li. As this is Mighty Storm Cloud Sword Technique's forbidden skill from Divine Sword Sect. Lui was shouting words of caution to Li Lingtian. She was then taken aback by her concern for this stranger. Ice and Fire Ring. Li Lingtian could not risk making mistakes at this point as well. He had experience cultivating astounding sword technique, and understood the strengths of such sword forms and skills. Not to mention that the Destroyer Sword had exceeded his expectations. It was even more appalling than his vast obscure extermination. He could not display thousand shadows of fluttering flowers since he had not cultivated the technique, so it was a waste of time talking about it. Ice and Fire Ring had a powerful defense. It would be wise to first protect himself. Ice Vitality Divine Fist. 300-mile Frost. Immemorial Ice Crystal was mobilized under Ice and Fire Ring's display. The temperature within 100 yards dropped drastically, and the surrounding area turned into a glacier. Meanwhile, Ice Vitality Divine Fist headed toward Su Tian's direction with smashing force and speed. Rumble. Crack. Splash. The glacier's formation had frozen the blade shadows formed by the numerous plants and boulders in ice, which greatly slowed down its attacking speed. Destroyer Sword's chi was also successfully held up by the ice barrier. Lui and Su Tian were bewildered by the glacier taking shape. While Su Tian was stunned by the ongoing business, an icy chi of doom hit and turned him into an ice statue. That ice statue shattered into smithereens under Li Lingtian's single punch. Su Tian's eyes were churning despair and horror before everything was gone with the fragmented pieces. Thud thud thud. Li Lingtian's body recoiled a few yards. The Ice and Fire Ring in front of him gradually disappeared and lost its glow. What a terrifying destroyer sword. He was utterly shocked as all the other blade shadows had been frozen and slowed down in the glacier, yet the destroyer sword managed to break through it. If not for the defense from Ice and Fire Ring, he would have been heavily wounded. Oh no, someone's coming this way. His divine mindfulness picked up a strong chi 1.5 miles away which was heading toward them. The speed detected was amazingly fast and was as good as his breeze technique. Li Lingtian stopped talking. Su Tian's storage sack and Storm Cloud Sword were quickly stashed away, and off he dashed toward Lui. Both of them then bolted from the scene. Their shadows disappeared immediately in the dark of the night. They would be safe in the forest because no one would ever go there unless they encountered demonic beasts. How frightening. Ice Path Warrior Soul and 3,000-mile Frost. And Divine Sword Sect's forbidden skill Destroyer Sword. For sure it wasn't easy to steer clear from its attacks. They better not cross paths with me though. The murderer of Divine Sword Sect's members was nothing compared to me. Li Lingtian and Lui were not even gone for 2 minutes before a shadow tore through the atmosphere and descended at the scene. The young adult was surprised when he looked over the huge pit in the ground, the ice bits of the remaining glacier, and the blade aura in the atmosphere. Warrior King Powerhouse. Chapter 40 Lui. Chapter 40 Lui. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. In the forest, a beautiful petite maiden and a 15-year-old young man in white ran non-stop for half an hour. Both of them were exhausted. 2. Junior brother, how's your wound? Louis noticed Li Lingjishan had stopped running. With a worried expression, she asked softly. The girl was proud and arrogant. With a cold and expressionless face, she treated everyone with indifference. However, this young man was different because he had an appealing charisma and aura. Being only a Tier 9 warrior who had entered the depths of the Hidden Dragon Isle, it shocked her that he could take an attack that she could not. No wonder the Sky Cloud sect dared to grant this genius entrance to the Hidden Dragon Isle. The care she had shown to this young man was mostly because he had saved her. It's alright, just a small wound, I just have to tend to it for a bit. How about you, senior sister? Li Lingtian carefully inspected the wound on his body. The injury sustained from the Destroyer Sword's shockwave would only require some minor treatment. Although the ice and fire ring was extraordinary, his cultivation level was still too low. Otherwise, he would not have been injured. It was not by choice that Li Lingtian had to run throughout the journey. His divine mindfulness had discovered the existence of a powerhouse on a warrior king's level. No matter how confident he was in his abilities, Li Lingtian would not dare pick a fight with a warrior king at this point. Junior brother Li, have this green onyx fruit as thanks for saving me. Louis spoke seriously as she brought out a fist-sized fruit and gave it to Li Lingtian. Although he had only saved her because he wanted the green onyx fruit, he was still sincerely grateful. That was women for you. Whoever pleased them would be seen as a good person. Thank you, senior sister Lu. This green onyx fruit is very important to me as a Tier 9 warrior. Otherwise, I wouldn't take it from you. Li Lingtian showed a hint of embarrassment. It was already hard for the Dragon Empire and they needed to be helping each other. He felt slightly guilty for asking for the fruit from Louis in exchange for saving her from danger. By the way, I made this spirit binding pill. It could be useful to you, senior sister. Please take it. Upon completing his sentence, Li Lingtian took out a jade bottle from his storage sack. He had made this bottle of pills when he had free time during the competition period in an attempt to improve his pill art. You're an apothecary. Louis had a shocked expression on her delicate face. It was already shocking to know that this 15-year-old genius had cultivated to the level of a Tier 9 warrior. She had not expected him to also be an apothecary. The gentle yet cold beauty now had the expression of a little girl. Her shocked expression made her look even more charming. Coupled with her power from the Misty Pavilion cultivation, she looked like a goddess from legends. Hehe. I was bored so I just practiced it for fun, Li Lingtian said as he laughed. Facing this peerless beauty, his heart pounded non-stop. A spirit-binding pill, not bad, Louis said and shook her head wordlessly. She felt at a loss for words knowing that he had only practiced it because he was bored. Louis opened the jade bottle to check if they were actually spirit-binding pills. Spirit-binding pills could only be made by Tier 2 apothecaries and this young man was only 15 years old. No one would believe that he was a Tier 2 apothecary. However, what she saw next made her even more astonished. What? This is a superior grade 2 spirit-binding pill. You're a great apothecary? 2. Haha, I'm not sure, I just practiced. I can't use spirit-binding pills easily because I'm a warrior. When I produced the pills, I was already a Tier 9 warrior. Li Lingtian made a helpless gesture. It could only be blamed on the fact that he had cultivated too quickly. Let me see your vitality pill. Don't tell me that it's also a superior one. Louis carefully placed the spirit-binding pill into her storage sack. A superior spirit-binding pill was extremely powerful. Although she had owned countless treasures, she had never owned a superior spirit-binding pill. Here. Li Lingtian took out a jade bottle that only had a few vitality pills inside. Since he was already at the Tier 9 peak, using pills would not be beneficial. It would simply be a waste if he consumed it. He continued walking forward after handing the jade bottle to Louis. This place was not safe, he had to find a safe place to heal his wounds and also refine the green onyx fruit. As a warrior, the green onyx fruit had endless benefits and could almost boost his warrior spirit by a 100%. Otherwise, he would not have gone against that Tier 8 warrior spirit powerhouse just to obtain it. Peerless, it's a peerless vitality pill. Behind him, Louis looked at the pill in her hand with a shocked expression. It was a legendary peerless pill. In the divine martial continent, a peerless pill was only spoken of in legends. It was impossible, even for a spiritual apothecary, to make a grade 1 peerless pill. She never thought that this young man in front of her would have such amazing capabilities. Not only that, his pill art was even more astounding. It was impossible for her not to be astonished. "Junior brother, please wait." Louis noticed Li Lingtian had continued walking forward and quickly ran towards Li Lingtian with a smile on her face, bearing a hint of slyness. She had a smile that could topple a city. Another smile from her would topple an entire country. Within the forest, upon a small hill, Li Lingtian sat in a cave with his eyes closed and knees crossed, using his full power to heal his wounds. Meanwhile, Louis also sat down to meditate and rest. Li Lingtian had originally planned to heal his wounds and cultivate alone, but Louis had offered to protect him. Left with no choice, Li Lingtian accepted her offer. Having this beauty beside him was a blessing to his eyes. However, he could not concentrate since it was a dangerous place. As the heaven and earth reincarnation circulated, Li Lingtian placed a great spirit pill into his mouth. His injuries from the shockwave quickly healed as the pill started to refine. As expected of the powerful sacred healing medicine, his injuries and true qi had completely recovered after only an hour. "If I don't use this green onyx fruit now, when else would I use it?" Li Lingtian thought as he held the green onyx fruit. He then quickly bit into it and finished it with a few bites. It was almost as if he was doing something righteous. Louis, who had just finished cultivating, could not hold in her laughter after seeing Li Lingtian. This junior brother was hilarious to her. This young man at 15 years old was already a tier 9 warrior. He might even be a grade 4 great apothecary. She did not expect him to be this amusing. The look on his face when he ate the green onyx fruit was simply hilarious. Champ. Li Lingtian was a bit shocked when he noticed Louis was laughing at him. It was only then he realized that he indeed looked quite funny. Though at the end of the day it was only a green onyx fruit and nothing more. However, he could not be bothered by Louis at this moment. The power of the green onyx fruit was spreading quickly within his body. Its astonishing power and spiritual qi was rushing towards his meridians. As the heaven and earth reincarnation circulated continuously, it turned the green onyx fruit's power and spiritual qi into true qi. His true qi had now started to change. It became even more intense, almost as if it had an actual form. After half an hour, Li Lingtian's whole body was covered in sweat and he had a pained expression. "Tier 9 warrior, break through it!" Li Lingtian shouted as the true qi from his entire body rushed towards the warrior spirit boundaries. At this moment, the powerful true qi successfully broke the warrior spirit boundaries, and his true qi started to quickly take an actual form. Strands of true qi circulated in his dantian and meridians, which eventually flowed into his dantian. The immemorial ice crystal and fire dragon's heart also received more nourishment. Li Lingtian clearly felt that his connection to the immemorial ice crystal and fire dragon's heart had gotten stronger. This meant that as long as he reached a certain cultivation level, he could fully refine the immemorial ice crystal and fire dragon's heart. When that happens, his cultivation level would increase by leaps and bounds. A strong essence spread throughout the air as Louis showed a surprised expression. Although she knew that the green onyx fruit had a high chance of enabling him to become a warrior spirit, she could not believe that Li Lingtian could cultivate this quickly. It only took him half an hour to enter the warrior spirit realm. Absorb. Li Lingtian tightened both of his fists as the essence in the cave quickly rushed towards him. Eventually, it turned into essential qi which entered Li Lingtian's meridian and flowed into his dantian. Congratulations on reaching the warrior spirit realm, junior brother. You have surely become stronger. Louis looked at Li Lingtian as he opened his eyes. His clear eyes were as bright as the stars in the night sky. He became even more attractive, and Li could not help but smile. Senior sister Lu is already a tier 6 warrior spirit, while I've only just entered the warrior spirit realm. Li Lingtian said as he stood up. He felt like his entire body was filled with an explosive power which had him feeling full of confidence. The warrior spirit realm and warrior realm were on completely different levels. Not only had his true qi become even purer, but it had also increased tremendously. He would be able to master even more skills after some practice. Now that Li Lingtian was in the warrior spirit realm, He could surely kill Su Tian, who was a Tier 8 warrior spirit that specialized in the divine sword, without much effort if they were to face each other again. Previously, he had had to use a sneak attack to kill Su Tian. Last time Li Lingtian had to descend from the sky as he displayed the vast obscure extermination, relying on its great force to injure Su Tian. Otherwise, he would not have been able to use his Ice Vitality Divine Fist to kill Su Tian. I'm older than you. Besides junior brother, you were able to kill Su Tian, who was a Tier 8 warrior spirit, when you were only a Tier 9 warrior. Now that you're in the warrior spirit realm, you don't need to worry much if you have to go against any strong warrior spirits. Lu Yi showed a rarely seen smile on her petite face, which was usually cold and expressionless. It was a smile that could topple an entire city. Li Lingtian was shaken by her gentle look. His heart pounded continuously, and he did not dare take another look at Lu Yi. For a moment he felt really awkward and embarrassed. He had been a human for both of his lives, and yet he still felt embarrassed in front of her. Chapter 41 Chapter 41 Second Prince Tian Wuji. Chapter 41 Second Prince Tian Wuji. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. By the way, senior sister, I'm going out tomorrow to look for treasure. What are your plans? Being accompanied by a lady is not a good thing. Besides, this lady is a disciple from the Misty Pavilion, and my Sky Cloud sect does not have a good relationship with them. Li Lingtian thought. This was a world where only powerhouses are respected. Not to mention people from different sects, even if they were from the same sect, they would still kill each other without hesitation. I'm going to go search for others from the same sect tomorrow. Lu Yi was stunned for a moment, and her alert eyes were filled with curiosity. This young man was definitely different from the others. Other warriors would have surely wanted to be accompanied by such a beauty. In the Misty Pavilion, countless geniuses would want to get close to a beauty like her, but it was as hard as ascending to the sky. However, she had not expected that he would hint that she should leave instead. Lu Yi felt a sudden sadness in her heart, which was probably due to the fact that she was high above the rest and was accustomed to always being treated well. She was not used to this sudden change in treatment. They did not talk that night, as Li Lingtian was meditating to cultivate a stable state. Now that he had achieved the warrior spirit realm, there were great changes within his body. Not only were the fire dragon's heart and immemorial ice crystal inside his dantian more stable than before, but there was also the hint of another presence in his dantian. Although the presence was weak, it was there. Earthpath True Qi, is it an Earthpath warrior soul? Li Lingtian started to check carefully, and his expressions kept changing with his confusion. This True Qi was definitely the True Qi of an Earthpath warrior soul. He had just become a warrior spirit, and now he had acquired another type of warrior soul. How could he not be shocked? If he were to continue breaking through the realms, he may eventually have an all-round warrior soul. In this divine martial continent, the type of warrior soul was decided at birth. If someone had two types of warrior souls, they would truly be a genius. Even if he had two types of warrior souls, one would be the main while the other would be the support, it was impossible for both types to be balanced. He had not expected to acquire another type of warrior soul right after his breakthrough. If this news were to be spread, the divine martial continent would surely be shaken. This must have been caused by the heaven and earth reincarnation. Though Li Lingtian was unsure, it could only be attributed to the heaven and earth reincarnation. The heaven and earth reincarnation was originally not a technique from the divine martial continent, but a sacred technique that transcended the level of gods. There are 5 elements of heaven and earth. When the 5 elements are in balance, heaven and earth will be formed. Now that Li Lingtian had figured out this riddle, he displayed the heaven and earth reincarnation again. The golden words formed in his head started to combine and became a complete technique. When the 5 elements are balanced, oh God, shouldn't it be impossible to cultivate all of the 5 elements? Li Lingtian was stunned. He had already obtained the Earth Path Warrior Soul, Fire Path Warrior Soul, and Ice Path Warrior Soul. Though water was gentle while ice was rigid, they shared the same source. This meant that Li Lingtian was originally a Water Path Warrior Soul. This meant that out of the 5 elements of warrior souls, Li Lingtian had already obtained 3 elements. As long as he can cultivate the wood path and metal path, he would obtain a total of 5 elements. When all 5 elements were obtained, heaven and earth would be balanced. His cultivation speed would be godlike, and he would obtain fearsome power. By then, he would be way stronger than what warriors from the same tier could ever imagine. One type of warrior soul would be one type of power, while 5 types of warrior souls would be 5 different types of powers. It would not be as simple as 1 + 1 = 2 once achieved. Once he obtained all 5 elements, he could ignore the main 5 elements of this world. This was because if an opponent was a fire path, he could go against them with a water path warrior soul. If his opponent was a metal path, he could go against them with a wood path warrior soul, as metal was weak to wood. Li Lingtian would have a warrior soul that could go against his opponents regardless of the type of warrior soul they had. Not only would he have a warrior soul that was strong against his opponent, he could also use his 4 other warrior souls as support against his opponents, which would make him extremely powerful. When Li Lingtian thought of this, he felt very excited. He was already really powerful with just the ice and fire warrior souls. If he had all 5 elements of warrior souls, he would be invincible. If Li Lingtian wanted to obtain another 2 types of warrior spirits, he would need to increase his cultivation level to warrior king, and then warrior ascendant. Only when he has achieved warrior ascendant would he acquire a total of 5 elements. However, this was only his speculation. He still did not know if reality would be the same as his assumptions. Regardless, one thing that could be confirmed was that he would only obtain another warrior soul when his cultivation level increases. After that, Li Lingtian started to focus on cultivating. As long as he continued to work hard, he would have a bright future. Naturally, he could not cultivate his skills in such a place. Besides, Lui was still there, and he could not reveal any of his secrets to her. The next day, Li Lingtian left the cave. He did not bother Lui as he saw that she was still meditating and left immediately. Li Lingtian flew towards the north in a flash. Now that Li Lingtian was in the warrior spirit realm, he felt more confident. As long as it was not someone who was a top-level super genius, he could completely ignore them. On a huge lake, there were hundreds of warriors repeatedly attacking a strong demonic beast. 2. Roar. Roar. 2. A huge sky-splitting roar, followed by countless blasting and explosion sounds, caused water from the lake to explode towards the sky. The noises from these happenings were truly fearsome. Quick, don't show any mercy. Once this demonic beast is killed, we'll split the ingredients and medicinal supplies that we can obtain from it. A warrior who was a Tier 9 warrior spirit shouted. He continued waving the premium spiritual equipment in his hand, while fierce attacks bombarded the demonic beast like a thunderstorm. This demonic beast was around 98 feet tall. Its huge body similar to a small mountain. There were hundreds of warrior spirit-tiered warriors bombarding it with formidable attacks, but none of them managed to make a fatal blow on this demonic beast. Tier 4. This is a Tier 4 pseudo-dragon beast. 10 miles away from the lake, Li Lingtian stopped and glanced with his divine mindfulness. Now that he had achieved the warrior spirit realm, his divine mindfulness could be used from as far as 30 miles away. From his divine mindfulness, he saw a 98 feet tall demonic beast which was like a small mountain. Li Lingtian was very familiar with this demonic beast. It was almost the same as the dragon from his past life. However, this beast was a pseudo-dragon beast, which meant that although it only had a hint of dragon's blood, it was not a real dragon. It's as strong as a warrior ascendant powerhouse. They're really looking for death. Li Lingtian observed the warriors and pseudo-dragon beast from afar using his divine mindfulness, and then looked for a hidden spot to meditate and rest. Only after those warriors stopped would he act. F***ck. There are quite a lot of people who want to be hunters. While Li Lingtian sat with his knees crossed and meditated, he used his divine mindfulness to check the surroundings for a moment. He discovered a few people who had carefully hidden their presence. They also did not have a weak cultivation level and were at least a Tier 7 warrior spirit or higher. Boom. Do. Boom. Do. Roar. Roar. 2 loud noises from explosives and roars from the beast sounded continuously. Meanwhile, as the pseudo-dragon beast swung its huge tail, Countless warriors were suddenly smashed into pieces, and blood rained the sky. Trash, a bunch of trash. A cold voice said. Suddenly, a dashing figure jumped out, and in a blink of an eye, he had arrived above the pseudo-dragon beast. Oh! A young warrior in a blue shirt, who radiated a strong presence, could be seen. He looked down at the warriors who were constantly attacking the pseudo-dragon beast with a proud stance. Tianjin Empire, Tian Wuji. Tier 2 Warrior King. Tianjin Empire, Second Prince Tian Wuji. Countless people knew about this youth, who was standing in the air with his weapon. All of them were extremely shocked. He was one of the strongest people of all time. Obey my commands, and I shall reward those who help me capture this pseudo-dragon beast. Tian Wuji looked down at the huge pseudo-dragon beast, his face filled with greed. This is a Tier 4 demonic beast with really strong offensive and defensive abilities. It would surely be a killer weapon if used in the army. What relationship does the Tianjin Empire have with my Southern Empire? Such ignorance. In your dreams. It's not like this pseudo-dragon beast is owned by the Tianjin Empire. If you want to capture it, then capture it yourself. I want to slay it. Let's take action and slay this pseudo-dragon beast. Ingredients from a Tier 4 are really rare. That's right, don't listen to him. For a moment, though countless warriors shouted loudly, their arms never stopped. They attacked the pseudo-dragon beast together with all their strength. In the distance, Li Lingtian frowned. He had a pained expression and his eyes became dull as if he had just received a great mental attack. What on earth is trying to direct my soul? Li Lingtian said to himself. The expression on his face grew even more pained. His body then suddenly shot out and went towards the north quickly. Chapter 42 Chapter 42 Nanyang Sacred Fire. Chapter 42 Nanyang Sacred Fire. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Die. 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 All of you just die. As Li Lingtian ran recklessly along the way, warriors who had sensed that he was only a Tier 1 warrior spirit chased after Li Lingtian with the malicious intent of stealing from him. However, facing Li Lingtian, they were all killed in a single blow. They did not have the slightest of strength to fight against him. Even the warrior who was a Tier 8 warrior spirit super genius was killed in a punch. Ice Vitality Divine Fist. 300-mile Frost. Whoosh. Poof. A Tier 9 warrior spirit peak genius was crushed into pieces by Li Lingtian's Ice Vitality Divine Fist. The backlash caused Li Lingtian to spew out blood. This was the 5th time that he had used the Ice Vitality Divine Fist, causing him to have serious internal injuries. In spite of that, he could not stop himself. Li Lingtian was being controlled by a mysterious presence. It controlled him to run towards the north without stop, killing everyone along the way, regardless if they were gods or demons. Tier 2 Warrior Spirit Breakthrough. After the countless fights and injuries, continuous usage of 10,000 spirit pill for healing and constant swallowing of spirit binding pills allowed Li Lingtian to break through and become a Tier 2 warrior spirit within a day. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days had gone by, and a month soon passed. Li Lingtian's clothes were covered in bloodstains and his face was pale. However, he had already managed to raise his cultivation level to a Tier 3 warrior spirit. In his journey, Li Lingtian had killed countless strong demonic beasts and warriors, and his storage sack was filled with pills. The more Li Lingtian flew towards the north, the clearer he felt the presence's attraction. Li Lingtian also had a strong feeling that the presence was something familiar. Yet, there was still a slight feeling of fear and strangeness regarding this familiar presence. On this day, Li Lingtian reached the front of a huge mountain. The presence's attraction in his heart had already reached its peak. He knew that whatever that was leading him was close by. While looking at this mountain that reached the clouds, Li Lingtian felt a strong presence. He felt extremely shocked that there was such a strong presence in this mountain. Who are you? Show yourself. Li Lingtian shouted loudly. The feeling of attraction stopped here. This type of attraction had caused him to feel a sense of fear. I've been waiting for you for a long time. It has been an entire 3,000 reincarnations. 3,000 reincarnations, not bad. You're not as strong as I expected, but you're not considered trash. Sigh, you're not considered trash, because you're worse than trash. 35 years, and you're still just a mere ant. I feel disappointed. A husky voice sounded in the air. However, rather than saying it sounded in the air, it actually projected itself in Li Lingtian's mind. This voice was talking to itself while Li Lingtian stared into the air in horror as if he just saw a ghost. In his eyes, he saw that the tall mountain flew up and smashed onto him mercilessly. Who the hell are you? Stop playing with me. Li Lingtian was already numbed. He himself was the only one in this world who knew that he could reincarnate. He had spent 20 years in his past life while he is 15 years old in his current life, which makes it an exact 35 years. Li Lingtian did not expect that it would know about his secret that clearly, and it even said that he was worse than trash. Li Lingtian was confused by its inexplicable words. I'm you and you're me. But it can only be said that I'm more unfortunate. My reincarnation is worse than trash. Wham! 2. The husky voice said calmly. Then the huge mountain came crashing down from the sky. Li Lingtian glanced at the mountain for a moment, and a strong wind tore his body, causing him to be covered in blood. Li Lingtian did not have a single thought about resisting this huge mountain. Resistance would be futile. Not to mention a warrior spirit, even a warrior ascendant or warrior emperor would be crushed into shreds when facing such a huge mountain. A sky-splitting noise sounded as the huge mountain crushed onto the ground mercilessly. Li Lingtian disappeared under the huge mountain like an ant. There was not a hint of a presence or sounds anymore from the mountain. Under the huge mountain it was a totally different world. Li Lingtian was now in a luxurious palace that had an ancient charm. Yet its vicissitude and solemn atmosphere made him uncomfortable. Li Lingtia spurted out some blood. The blow from the mountain just now was actually just an illusion, and then he ended up here mysteriously. In the palace there was a shadow floating above the supreme throne. Its empty eyes were staring at Li Lingtian. Facing those eyes, Li Lingtian felt as if it could see through everything and nothing could be hidden from them. Such a strong spiritual force. Did this shadow lead me here? This seems unrealistic. Li Lingtian was shocked. He could not care about the bloodstains on the corner of his mouth. His eyes were fixed upon that shadow without flinching. At this point it was already too late for him to be afraid. You're not afraid of death. The shadow said calmly. It had a husky voice which was the same as the voice before. This had confirmed Li Lingtian's thought that it was this shadow that led him here. Afraid of death? What a joke. I've already died once, so it doesn't matter even if I die once more. You're definitely not afraid of death, because you've already died 3,000 times. Although you're a little trash, but at least you're confident. Do you want to become a supreme existence? The shadow's eyes continued staring at Li Lingtian. To a warrior, what it said was definitely tempting. Who would not want to become a supreme existence? However, Li Lingtian had to disappoint it as his face showed a trace of disdain. If you could become a supreme existence, then why are you still here? Li Lingtian glanced at the shadow with disdain. He had already been a human for 2 lives, so he naturally understood the situation now. This shadow definitely had something to ask for. Li Lingtian was not a 3-year-old child and would not be fooled. Even if he wanted to become a strong warrior, he could just rely on his own efforts. He would not need to give in to this shadow's temptation. I'll kill you. The shadow glanced at Li Lingtian. After hearing his words, it was suddenly angered. At this point, Li Lingtian felt as if death was close. Suddenly, Li Lingtian was in an endless purgatory of blazing flames. The whole world was in flames. The bottomless flaming abyss in the fire dragon cave seemed insignificant when compared to here. I'm the 9 Lives Divine Lord. If not for the immemorial ice crystal, I would have been the Divine Emperor. Now I'll let you taste the power of the 9 Yang sacred fire. Let's see how long your flaming sacred body can last, and if you'll still be stubborn after this. The shadow said loudly. Although its voice sounded calm, it was not hard to realize its seething anger, while it looked at Li Lingtian with eyes filled with rage. Ha, I have the flaming sacred body. Don't think that it'll be easy to bum me to death. F*CKU. Where the hell did you get the 9 Yang sacred fire? 2. Let me out of here. Tu. Li Lingtian scolded loudly. His whole body was almost roasted in this sea of flames. Even though he had been using both the sacred fire body and fire dragon's heart, he still could resist this mysterious flame. I myself am the 9 lives divine lord. Sigh, if not for the immemorial ice crystal, I would have definitely become the divine emperor in 300,000 years. Your flaming sacred body was actually mine, such a waste. I even fulfilled you before I turned into dust. The shadow said calmly with a husky and withered voice. It then reminisces the times when it was one of the most powerful beings in the divine realm who shocked the divine realm. It did not expect to be weakened by the immemorial ice crystal. Otherwise, it would have become a divine emperor-like existence. As time went by, Li Lingtian's clothes had all been burned and his body had turned into a ball of blazing fire. His eyes were also filled with a raging fire. Now Li Lingtian had no skin, no bones, and was just a man whose whole body was covered in flames. Immemorial ice crystal refine. The pain on his body and even the mental pain had become completely numb to Li Lingtian. No one could imagine the pain that he was suffering. Li Lingtian, who had the flaming sacred body, was now utterly covered in flames. However, within the blazing flames, a deep blue ice crystal was constantly resisting the flames from refining. The fire dragon's heart had long been melted away by the flames. The fire dragon's heart was only the essence of a fire dragon. Although it was powerful, it was nothing compared to this so-called 9-yang sacred fire. Yes, that's it. As long as you can refine the immemorial ice crystal, haha, you would have a promising future. The shadow stared at Li Lingtian constantly. Seeing the immemorial ice crystal in Li Lingtian's body, it was not sure whether it was angry or excited. However, when Li Lingtian screamed, it could not help but feel excited. Boom! Boom! Within the flames, the immemorial ice crystal continued to resist the 9-yang sacred fire from refining. After some time, there was finally a loud explosion, and the immemorial ice crystal turned into pieces as it melted into the 9-yang sacred fire. Suddenly, the 9-yang sacred fire weakened, as if it was going to disappear any time. Yet at this moment, the 9-yang sacred fire became a mixture of red and blue as the immemorial ice crystal melted. Its color could not be differentiated. Chapter 43 9-yang Sacred Lord of the Past Life. Chapter 43 9-yang Sacred Lord of the Past Life. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Wham! The integration of the immemorial ice crystal and 9-yang sacred fire produced a terrifying qi. As the two extremes came into blows, the flame blew up even more. It was as if oil was poured on top of a fire. However, the flame, which carried an element of extreme chill, could not be differentiated as flame or frost. The flame released a chilling sensation, yet it was not frost, because this ice was burning at the same time. Success. Tvi finally succeeded. There you have it, the coexistence of ice and fire for you. I am finally reborn after 3,000 reincarnations. My disappearance will accomplish my future. Tremble at my feet, world. The surreal figure let out a deranged laugh while it looked at the flame. In a flash, the surreal figure transformed into a streak of flames before it disappeared into the frigid flame beside Li Lingtian. Suddenly, Li Lingtian received shocking information from his brain, and he became afraid. Although this surreal figure was only a phantom without an entity, it was all-powerful. Li Lingtian would not stand a chance to resist if it were to seize and house his body. However, he could not wrap his head around the fact that this surreal figure had disappeared in perpetuity, and left behind only information that was transferred straight to his mind. Retrieve. I said retrieve. Nevertheless, this situation was out of his hands at this point. He was without a body and was nothing but a ball of flame. He had to absorb the frigid flame to reconstruct his body. Swish, 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 swish. With the wind howling in the background, Li Lingtian's flaming frame gradually evolved into an entity. He looked no different from before, but he seemed easier on the eyes. Dressed in satin skin that even a woman would be envious of, His outer flesh was without a flaw while inside his body rested an endless flaming qi. I am a powerhouse of the upper world, also known as Nine-Yang Sacred Lord. During my cultivation, the descending immemorial ice crystal had crippled my cultivation level. I unleashed a forbidden spell to create this dimension as I diminished to nothing. I then worked out the absolute sacred technique that allowed ice and fire to coexist. The heaven and earth reincarnation of heaven's scriptures has been passed down since ancient times, so please proceed with caution. Not only are you a third of my soul, but the flaming sacred body of this divine martial continent also constitutes a third of my soul. 3,000 reincarnations have passed, and this will be the last. The entire divine martial continent would have disappeared if you didn't show up. With 3,000 reincarnations gone, I'm slowly losing my memory. Everything now rests in your hands. I am Nine-Yang Sacred Lord and you are my reincarnation. Don't embarrass us. The inner vital of the pseudo-dragon beast is one of the keys to opening the Divine Dragon Palace. Keep safe. As rows of information played in his mind, his head became clearer and sharper than before. It took half an hour before Li Lingtian opened his eyes. He finally understood all that had happened. He, in the 21st century, was one-third of the soul while the Li Lingtian in Divine Martial Continent was also one-third of the soul. Together with the surreal figure's soul, he was now one complete soul. So I'm the reincarnation of Nine-Yang Sacred Lord. I am Nine-Yang Sacred Lord, Li Lingtian murmured under his breath. Everything, including the palace, then vanished before his eyes, leaving only darkness behind. There really is a God in this world and I am one of them. Li Lingtian examined his body and soon found himself at a loss for words. He started to look around everywhere. He was disappointed. The heaven and earth conflagration under the Nine-Yang sacred fire could even melt the powerful onyx equipment, imperial equipment, and divine equipment, let alone a storage sack. F***ck this it's a lost cause. Do I have to run naked? Li Lingtian took a look around and realized that the flaming world in which he had experienced before was only 10,000 square feet in size. The ground was pitch black without a speck of dust. Needless to say, his storage sack was nowhere in sight. Putting the medicinal supply, inner vitals or the cloud-startling sword, a peerless spiritual equipment aside, he should be left with a set of clothes at least. Instead, he was stark naked from head to toe, without a single hair on his body. Even if he unleashed Ice Vitality Divine Fist and Flaming Divine Fist to take care of some low-level warriors, he could not possibly go into battle bare. I've advanced to another tier. I'm a Tier 4 warrior spirit now. As he sensed the changes within him, Li Lingtian discovered that he had reached Tier 4 in warrior spirit state. Moreover, the energy in his body was purer by multiple folds. Flaming Divine Fist. Bam! With Flaming Divine Fist at his fingertips, he pulled a punch. A 3-yard-length Flaming Divine Fist was suddenly slammed onto the ground, exploding the ground into a huge dark pit. Conception. The Flaming Divine Fist has been unleashed to a conception-like degree. There were no words to describe the shock he was in. He had climbed up a tier after going through a state of nirvana, which gave him better control of his flaming skills. His Flaming Divine Fist had reached conception, the legendary conception. Ice Vitality Divine Fist. 300-mile frost. Swoosh! A sparkling and translucent glacier extended within the 1,000-yard radius. As Li Lingtian stood within this glacier, he could sense its terrifying force. Following a punch, the glacier was crushed into bits like a shattered mirror. With the immemorial ice crystal and fire dragon's heart finally in the clear and integrated into his body, he saw an increase in his ability as well as a more domineering constitution. First things first, I should get out of here. He lay out a plan at that thought. He could look for a person or two once he got out and freeze his opponent with a strike of Ice Vitality Divine Fist. His problem would then be solved by seizing the victim's storage sack and clothes. Li Lingtian searched around the palace but he could not find an exit because a mountain was over it. Well, I'll be a pangolin for once. With a mountain on top in mind, Li Lingtian had to dig a tunnel out of there. Once he detected a direction, Li Lingtian smashed a fist of heaven falls earth rends and the palace was suddenly in shambles. Using both his hands, He then began to dig out a tunnel way. Time went on day by day, and if he had to put his finger on it, he could have been excavating for 2 weeks. In other words, a month had passed in Hidden Dragon Isle. Outside the mountain, a chain of explosions ensued. Qin Feng, hand over the onyx equipment, purple-green sword, and I'll spare your life, a Tier 9 warrior spirit young man exclaimed. With a premium spiritual equipment that flickered with ferocious qi in his hand, the young man darted a cold stare at the youth before him. Young Hao, who the hell do you think you are? I'm holding a mediocre onyx equipment right here. Come take it if you can. Qin Feng sneered in response. A mediocre onyx equipment itself was a revering existence. Many warrior spirit powerhouses did not even possess a spiritual equipment, yet he had managed to uncover an onyx equipment. Although it was only a mediocre onyx equipment, it still bore greater strength than a peerless spiritual equipment. As there were also 7 to 8 Tier 3 and 4 warrior spirits eyeing him covetously from afar, he found himself in a tight spot. Then die. The onyx equipment will be ours once you're dead. Strike now. At the wave of Yang Hao's arm, all the warriors made their move. For the sake of an onyx equipment, they struck an attack towards Qin Feng, and at that moment the earth began to shake. Ah! Why the F***ck did you hit me? Ah! Following the sounds of shrieking wails, Qin Feng exterminated them one after another. It was unknown who had the storage sack at this point, but whoever was in possession of it was bound to be hit with the most powerful attack. In that brief moment, only 3 out of the 20 warrior spirits were left on the scene. 1 Tier 7 and 2 Tier 9 warrior spirits. Yang Hao, I know where you stand in strength. Hand over the purple-green sword and both of us will spare your life. Zhou Tian turned his gaze to Yang Hao while he sent a signal to his junior brother beside him. There was no issue in taking down Yang Hao if the two of them joined forces. With the trio engaging in a 2-pronged attack, a major battle was forthcoming. Senior sister, who do you think will end up with the purple-green sword? In the distance, 3 women watched the fight for the onyx equipment in the mountain. However, even after the deaths of multiple warriors, they showed no signs of making a move. None of them will get their hands on the onyx equipment. It belongs to our Misty Pavilion. With her eyes fixated afar, Zhou Qingqing laughed playfully. She would make her strike once the trio had sustained injury. She was originally a Tier 9 peak warrior spirit, but she had managed to break through to Tier 1 warrior king a month after her entry. Bam! Wham! Tui! Tui! Ah! The moment the trio engaged in a huge battle, the Tier 7 warrior spirit met his fate while the 2 Tier 9 warrior spirits spat out blood simultaneously. Both of them had sustained severe injury. Senior sister, do we jump in now? Wait a minute, it'll be easier later. With 1 warrior spirit down and 2 deeply wounded, Zhou Qingqing knew the remaining 2 would breathe their last if she were to wait a little longer. Phew! Just on the mountainside, Li Lingtian took in the breath of fresh air. He was finally out after digging through a tunnel for 2 weeks. Chapter 44. Embarrassed. Chapter 44, Embarrassed. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Someone's in battle. Are they tired of living? Li Lingtian turned his gaze to the 2 wounded warriors whose lives were hanging by a thread. He was overjoyed to be in such circumstances as he could simply eliminate those 2 warriors and take their clothes off them. Zhou Tian, I'll be leaving first. Having said that, a jade slip appeared the moment Yang Hao extended his arm. The jade slip was clouded in spiritual qi. Major maneuver spell. Major maneuver spell. Zhou Tian gasped in surprise. At the same time but at a distance away, Zhou Qingqing too cried out with a face of regret. This major maneuver spell was capable of shifting a person to a great distance, and if so, he could no longer be pursued. Although Li Lingtian was equally shocked, this major maneuver spell intrigued him. With that, he circulated his body of true qi to unleash his Ice Vitality Divine Fist. Ice Vitality Divine Fist. 300-mile frost. After letting out a gentle shout, a glacier emerged within a 1,000-yard radius at the flicker of his body. Yang Hao and Zhou Tian were now trapped in this glacier, frozen stiff as ice sculptures. Even though Yang Hao was on the verge of unleashing the major maneuver spell, fear was cemented on his face. Huh. Eh. Shameless. The three women afar were shocked that a powerful master was lurking amongst them there. Even as a warrior king, Zhou Qingqing's divine mindfulness could not detect him. However, the three women's faces soon flushed red as a naked young man appeared out of thin air and submerged into the glacier. Clang! The glacier shattered to pieces at the sound of a huge explosion. With Yang Hao and Zhou Tian gone, Li Lingtian quickly found a set of clothes and wore it on his body. CK. This is very embarrassing. Li Lingtian's expression hardened after he put on some clothes because he realized that three women were peering from a distance. They must have seen him in his birthday suit. His reputation was now ruined. Ruined. As soon as he said that, Li Lingtian cleared many warrior storage sacks in a hurry. Since he was poverty-stricken and did not have a penny to his name, he was not one to waste these storage sacks. Senior sister, I don't want the onyx equipment anymore. Let's go, a gorgeous woman beside Zhou Qingqing said before looking the other way. She did not have the nerve to gaze afar. Could that young man have a weird fetish in fighting without clothes? What a pity, he seemed to be a lovely man. He's only a tier 4 warrior spirit. Wait for me, I'll retrieve the onyx equipment. Zhou Qingqing too was blushing, but she forced the image to the back of her mind at the thought of the onyx equipment. Judging by the looks of her junior sister, she knew she was feeling shy. Senior sister, let it be. He's junior brother Li Lingtian from Sky Dragon Empire, Louis muttered in a soft voice. Her face turned boiling hot when she connected the dots between this junior brother to the memory of both of them spending a night in a cave. Skycloud sex Li Lingtian. Zhou Qingqing and the other junior sister cried out in alarm. Before entering the Hidden Dragon Isle, Li Lingtian was persuaded to take apprenticeship under a warrior ascendant, and he had even competed against the same warrior ascendant in a battle of flaming forces. Swoosh! As a piercing sound cut through the air, a figure appeared before the trio. With fears written all over their faces, the trio took a step back in unison. Even Zhou Qingqing, who was a warrior king, fell back a step. This young man had fought au natural. If the circumstances were the same, they would not be able to face him. Senior sisters. Deep down, Li Lingtian smiled bitterly as his earlier actions were exposed to these three young girls. If he were to leave right away, news of him tending to run around naked would spread like wildfire. Shameless, the trio exclaimed. Li Lingtian was taken aback. He had quite a luck in finding himself in these situations. Senior sisters, you've misunderstood. I came across some issues during cultivation and my storage sack was burned to dust. Do you think I like to have it this way? Li Lingtian pointed at his apparel. It was obvious that the clothes were one size larger and did not fit him. He did not even have any usable weapons on him. Huh. Junior brother Li, your cultivation. I see. After spending a night with Li Lingtian, Louis realized that he was not as deplorable as she had imagined. Taking another glance at Li Lingtian's cultivation level, she could not help but believe his words due to his advancement from Tier 1 to Tier 4 warrior spirit state. Louis chuckled, putting Li Lingtian in an awkward position. Senior sister, junior brother Li's right. He cultivates fire path techniques. I've personally witnessed junior brother Li breaking through a while ago, and now he's a Tier 4 warrior spirit. Something must have happened during his cultivation. Pleased to find Li Lingtian embarrassed, Louis then turned to explain to Zhou Qingqing. Zhou Qingqing could tell that something strange was going on with Li Lingtian's clothes. Besides, his clothes did not fit him. For a moment the three women burst into giggles while Li Lingtian stood there blankly, not knowing whether he should lash out. If there's nothing else, I shall take my leave now, Li Lingtian spoke before he turned around in an attempt to leave. However, he was called back by Zhou Qingqing. Junior brother Li, where do you plan on going? Zhou Qingqing asked in a sweet voice. The more allies they had in Hidden Dragon Isle, the stronger the forces. Although the treasures divided would be less, they would feel much safer. It's still early, so I'm going to take a stroll around or else my trip here will be in vain. Li Lingtian spread his palms out helplessly, Since he had lost everything, he had to venture out in search of treasures, or he would suffer double losses. There appears to be a strange phenomenon happening in Hidden Dragon Isle. Some treasures might have emerged. Why don't we join forces? Zhou Qingqing gave out a faint smile. Considering that the trio's combined strength was not enough, and they required new blood, Li Lingtian made a great choice. 1 foot 11 inches be leaving. I can't face you after you've seen me naked. With that, Li Lingtian circulated his breeze technique, and before the trio could say anything more, he had disappeared into the forest. This guy. Gazing at the direction Li Lingtian left in, Lui felt a sense of loss. However, the thought of Li Lingtian in a fix left her bursting out in laughter. Li Lingtian launched his breeze technique to its summit. In a second he was already dozens of miles away. The phenomenon Zhou Qingqing was referring to was most likely Divine Dragon Palace. The way Nanyang Sacred Lord described Divine Dragon Palace made it sound like it was dangerous, but what he really meant was that there were treasures in there too. The 4th tier pseudo-dragon beast's inner vital was key to enter Divine Dragon Palace. Hence, his priority was to find the Prince of Tianjin Empire, who possessed the pseudo-dragon beast. Subduing the pseudo-dragon beast was out of the question, but killing the beast was possible by teaming up with more warriors. Now that he was out, there was still a lot on the list to take care of before he could advance to Divine Dragon Palace. Otherwise, he would meet his end if he were to confront that many super powerhouses there. The sky gradually darkened as he dashed through hundreds of yards. So Li Lingtian sought out a concealed cave and took shelter in it before sitting in meditation for a rest. Who would have thought? Sitting with his legs crossed, Li Lingtian still found it bizarre as his mind played back the events from a few days ago. He had somehow transmigrated over and realized that he was only a soul. After 3,000 reincarnations, he would have disappeared from the face of the earth if the 3 souls did not meet. He would probably have suffered a violent death in his former 21st century past. Hence he thanked his lucky stars that the souls merged in time. The only downside was that all of his memories were missing. All that was left were his memory of his 21st century past and this life. However, it was all good. He could kickstart his life anew. With the heaven and earth reincarnation from the heaven scriptures, his flaming sacred body, ice vitality warrior soul, and the souls of 3 alongside his 21st century wisdom, he could simply pick himself back up. Now I should straighten up. Although I have the Nanyang sacred fire, as well as the immemorial ice crystal and fire dragon's heart taken care of, I have yet to adjust to it, Li Lingtian mumbled to himself. With that, he began to cultivate with full energy. The immemorial ice crystal and fire dragon's heart were no longer of concern. Now that he was a Tier 4 warrior spirit equipped with the ever-omnipotent ice vitality warrior soul and flaming sacred body, he was no longer at risk amid warrior spirit powerhouses. He mainly had to watch out for warrior king masters. Nevertheless, his ice vitality divine fist and flaming divine fist had made great strides. They released a powerful drive upon eruption, deserving the title as one of his killer moves. Chapter 45 Divine Dragon Palace. Chapter 45 Divine Dragon Palace. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Those who could operate an airship in Hidden Dragon Isle were not one to mess with. It's His Highness the Second Prince. Yao Tianxiong frowned at the sight of the airship. The arrival of more powerhouses here would turn up the heat in the competition. With Tian Wuji joining in, it would be more challenging to contend. Although they were super geniuses of Tianjin Empire, they dared not cross the line with Tianjin Empire's prince. Yao Tianxiong, Zhou Qianjiao, you guys are one step ahead of me. How is it? Report the situation to me. With an air of haughtiness, Tian Wuji stared down at Yao Tianxiong's group in a commanding position as though he was a king on high. Assuming such a posture made many powerhouses displeased with him. We just got here so we don't really know, Zhou Tianjiao faintly replied as he hid his displeasure within. Even though he was unhappy, it was not the time nor place to act out his emotions. No one in Tianjin Empire was bold enough to defy the empire that housed countless powerhouses. Oh, you don't know. You explain the situation. Tianwuji turned his gaze to another powerhouse. The faces of warriors beneath hardened at his demanding tone, spurring a heavy atmosphere that could be cut through with a knife. F*CKU Tianwuji, get your *us down here. I'll whack you until your mother can't recognize you. You're only a forsaken son who has no power in Tianjin Empire. How dare you throw your weight about in front of me? Bao of the Southern Empire's 10,000 demons sect ran his mouth out loud. As a favored son of the Southern Empire, he would not be treated as a servant. Tianjin Empire's powerhouses may be afraid of stepping on Tianwuji's toes, but that did not include the warriors of the Southern Empire. Die! Tianwuji was stunned, but his face was quickly clouded with animosity. As a killing intent flashed past his eyes, Tianwuji raised his arm without warning and slammed a peerless spiritual equipment towards Bao. Many warriors were in dismay as the atmosphere quivered as though it was about to tear apart. The strike of a warrior king was indeed revering. Tianwuji had the tolerance for many things, but saying that he was not in power was his sore spot. Sure, out of the numerous princes in Tianjin Empire, he was only a forsaken son, but opening up his old wounds flipped his lid. Heavenly demon's body break. Bao looked towards the warrior king's peerless spiritual equipment with eyes of disdain. Circulating his true chi, Bei Chi turned into a 30-foot-tall demonic beast. At the explosion of great demonic energy, the huge body and sturdy defense left quite a visual impact. Bam! A giant fist violently crashed onto Tianwuji's attack. When the explosion sounded, the two attacks disappeared into a burst of forces in the air. Based on that one move, the duo's abilities were on par with one another. The attack from warrior kings left countless warrior spirits shaking in the knees. Humph, watch your back. Although he failed in his attempt, Tianwuji did not intend to continue the battle. Plenty of powerhouses were present and his purpose was to search for treasure. Attaining this treasure would allow him to rise in power and gain control of Tianjin Empire. Swish, swish. No one uttered another word after the battle between two warrior kings had ended. From time to time, whistling noises passed through the sky as numerous powerhouses bolted over. Those who were able to make it here were warrior spirit powerhouses and disciples of supersects. There were also many warrior kings. Krung! An omnipotent energy soared skyward from the peaceful lake, which caused the entire lake to tremble and oppressed over 1,000 powerhouses. This is the 8th time. This astounding energy exploded in the air before it gradually disappeared. A multitude of warriors started to engage in a discussion. This energy shock had been ongoing for the 8th time, and it came up once every 2 to 3 days. This phenomenon confirmed many powerhouses' belief that an amazing treasure was present. It's the 8th time. It should come up again one more time before Divine Dragon Palace opens. I'm lucky that I made it in time. Li Lingtian quickly unleashed his motion skill before he soon arrived at a spot near the lake. As he looked at the lake, he was in shock to find that many warriors were gathered there. The number of warriors amassed surpassed 1,000, and each of them was at least a tier 5 or 6 warrior spirit. Not to mention there were also 9 warrior king powerhouses there. A while back, Li Lingtian had flown northwest in search of Divine Dragon Palace after taking a break. While on the way, he encountered several top geniuses who also took flight in the same direction. Based on his experience, he was right on the money in terms of direction. He had eliminated demonic beasts and slaughtered blundering warrior spirits along the way. I wonder what treasure is hidden in Divine Dragon Palace. Even Ninyang's Sacred Lord took it to heart, Li Lingtian mumbled to himself with smiling eyes. From where he was, he spotted disciples from Misty Pavilion, Green Jade Sect, Sky Cloud Sect, and Radiant Sect. The warriors from Sky Dragon Empire were, no doubt, fewer amid these masters. Even Radiant Sect and Green Jade Sect were second-rates compared to other empires. After making a note of all the powerful warriors, Li Lingtian sought out a hidden spot to meditate and rest. The Divine Dragon Palace should make an appearance when the next sign presented itself. The wait was 3 days. 3 days had passed before the calm lake churned in turbulence. Wham! Whoosh! An impressive energy soared in the sky. This time, the entire hidden dragon isle shook as the lake waters towered sky-high following the energy. Many nearby warriors were swept into the lake waters, and in the blink of an eye, The mighty water pillar took the lives of these warrior spirits. Aghast, the remaining warriors withdrew to a distance in a hurry. This energy was stronger than the former 8 times. With this, Li Lingtian opened his eyes that were twinkling in excitement. The astonishing energy had blown up the lake, and it uncovered a silvery radiance in the center. Although the radiance was the size of 10 feet, it grew more brilliant by the second. Soon, the 10-foot-tall silvery radiance had expanded to 1,000 feet in circumference. In fact, it was not a radiance but a silver palace. This silver palace of 100-yard in height towered amid the lake. Given its silver exterior, it was unknown what was used to construct the palace. The palace had a pitch-black gate that was about 30 feet tall and 15 feet wide. Divine Dragon Palace has appeared. Divine Dragon Palace finally made its appearance. Silence. Everybody, think of a way to open the gate. Let's join forces, or else our wait for a century would go to waste. Many warriors bubbled over with excitement. After all, they were here on Hidden Dragon Isle that only opened once every century. For Divine Dragon Palace. Now that Divine Dragon Palace was within reach, they had to figure out a way to get in. Wham! It was only 10 minutes later that the soaring energy and churning lake surface resumed its peacefulness. However, a demonic energy spread about as if a bomb was detonated in the air. The demonic energy had a crushing effect on countless warriors. With that said, powerhouses who were inferior to Tier 5 warrior spirits were immediately crushed to death. Appalled, the remaining warriors quickly pulled away to a distance, but to their disappointment, they found that it was impossible to make a dash outside 3 miles. What a terrifying demonic energy! This is the repression of an almighty demonic master. Hiss! Many surviving warriors stared at the repression in the air with pale faces. This repression of such omnipotent demonic energy was difficult to fend off from the outside, let alone inside Divine Dragon Palace. It's so powerful that the weak who are lower than a Tier 5 warrior spirit would be crushed to death. Under the oppression of this repression, Li Lingtian was too forced to withdraw from his cultivation. He stared at the repression in shock. This repression was almost substantial, taking the form of a heavy mist. However, the heaven and earth reincarnation in his body, as well as his powerful flaming sacred body, were unaffected by this repression. With the immemorial ice crystal and fire dragon's heart dissolved in his body, his improved constitution built up resistance towards the repression. Within his vision, he could only see 30-odd Tier 9 peak imperfection warrior spirits, 17 warrior kings, and 10-odd masters who were equipped with treasures left by the lake. Sigh. Li Lingtian could only sigh at the deaths of low-level warriors from Sky Cloud sect and other sects in Sky Dragon Empire. With the majority under Tier 5 warrior spirits crushed to death, there were only a handful of warriors who were left. At the lakeside, the 60-odd super masters stared solemnly at Divine Dragon Palace. These masters would be the strongest existence to enter Hidden Dragon Isle. Chapter 46 Chapter 46 Onyx Equipment, Purple-Green Sword. Chapter 46 Onyx Equipment, Purple-Green Sword. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. These are all garbage. After cultivating, Li Lingtian opened the storage sacks. He collected and began to make an inventory of his gain. The contents were mostly lousy pills and weapons, but there he had also found a century and 5-year-old medicinal supply along with some demonic beasts' inner vitals in there. He was no longer swayed by spiritual stones and such because he was in need of a convenient weapon. Having lost the cloud-startling sword, sky-perishing spear, and the pill tripod for pill refinery, he was now left empty-handed. What a strong spiritual chi fluctuation. An exquisite tiny sword appeared before his eyes. Assuming a blend of purple and green color, this tiny sword released a heavy spiritual chi, and an oppressive force rushed toward Li Lingtian. Mediocre onyx equipment, purple-green sword. The moment his divine mindfulness forced its way into the blade, Li Lingtian received information that this weapon was an onyx equipment called purple-green sword. He could not believe that it was an onyx equipment. Who would have thought that after losing a peerless spiritual equipment, he would gain an onyx equipment in turn? A mediocre onyx equipment fared significantly better in strength compared to the spiritual equipment. Ha 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 ha. Li Lingtian burst out laughing. This made his trip to Hidden Dragon Isle worthwhile even if he were to return with empty pockets. Not to mention, he now had a mediocre onyx equipment in hand. With this onyx equipment, the force driven by the astounding sword technique's first form, Bright Moon and Soft Breeze, would be more powerful than Vast Obscure Extermination. Purple-green sword, refine. Following a yell, Li Lingtian gestured a few motions before he shot out a curl of his fresh blood. His blood essence then formed a bloody screen that swiftly wrapped around the purple-green sword. With this, the purple-green sword struggled to get out of the wrapper. Nevertheless, the struggle was futile in the face of Li Lingtian's amazing soul and divine mindfulness. Even a warrior king could not stack up against his divine mindfulness. Since Ninyang's Sacred Lord's surreal figure was sustained by his soul and divine mindfulness, one could well imagine how powerful his divine mindfulness was. Even if Li Lingtian did not inherit much of it, warrior kings were still no match to him. Swoosh! 10 minutes later, the refining of the purple-green sword was a success. Li Lingtian extended his arm to grab a hold of the sword whilst circulating his body of true qi. Immediately, the purple-green sword enlarged to a yard in length and released a heavy stench of repression. This was the repression of a weapon, the repression of an onyx equipment. The repression released from this onyx equipment is capable of restraining Tier 2 warrior spirits and below. Li Lingtian was ecstatic over this omnipotent repression. He could even sense the fluctuating repression coming from the purple-green sword with just a gentle swing of his arm. His confidence instantly inflated. Astounding sword technique, Bright Moon and Soft Breeze. Astounding sword technique, Vast Obscure Extermination. Astounding sword technique, Thousand Shadows of Fluttering Flowers. Swish swish, swish swish. Clang clang. Unable to stifle his confidence, he left the cave in a flash and brought his astounding sword technique to full play. He had already mastered the first two forms, but it had never crossed his mind that he could spontaneously demonstrate the third form after demonstrating the preceding moves. It was hard not to rejoice over the fact that after multiple failed attempts, he had eventually cultivated the third form. Oh! As blade auras crisscrossed in the air, a mass of weaving blade shadows and auras ripped the atmosphere to shreds. He was more in shock to find that the atmosphere was shattering like a mirror. The air within a 10-yard radius was like pieces of broken mirror, and Li Lingtian's mind was blown at the magnificent display of force. So this is the Thousand Shadows of Fluttering Flowers. Li Lingtian was in awe at the presence of the shattered dimension. With an onyx equipment demonstrating the Thousand Shadows of Fluttering Flowers, the warrior king powerhouses will be dead? Haha. The confident smile deepened on his face. The onyx equipment itself was powerful, but when matched with great skill, nobody would be able to fend off the move. Heaven falls, earth rends. Bam! After storing his purple-green sword, he circulated his body of true qi before he smashed his fist onto the ground. With Li Lingtian as the center, the ground shook and exploded into multiple cracks. The ground was flipped upside down within a 100-yard radius. Ice Vitality Divine Fist. Hold! At this moment, the shattered dimension and chaos on Earth immediately froze inside a 10,000 square feet glacier. Flaming Divine Fist. Conception. Clang. Once the Flaming Divine Fist had reached conception, it was no longer an Amber Tier inferior skill. A skill of this level could not be measured as it was neither an Amber Tier nor Onyx Tier. However, it was definitely stronger than the Amber Tier and a regular Onyx Tier since the degree of force had reached that of an Onyx Tier superior skill. It was unimaginable for the Flaming Divine Fist to put an end to the Ice Vitality Divine Fist under normal circumstances. Nevertheless, succeeding in conception would see the glacier resolved in a single fist. This was also all part of Li Lingtian's plan. Otherwise, even an Earth Tier skill, let alone an Amber Tier skill, would not be able to abolish the glacier formed by his immemorial ice crystal. Heaven and Earth conflagration. With the glacier gone, the Earth resumed its peace while the dimension stabilized. However, it was at this moment when the temperature that surrounded Li Lingtian rose steeply within the range of 100 yards, reducing everything to ashes. As palm print after palm print was unleashed, A sea of fire emerged before it seared the forest within 100-yard radius to nothing. With the ground set on fire as well, the land melted into lava. Raging flames towered to a height of 100 yards in the sky. Standing amid the flames, Li Lingtian was the master in control, and a confident smile slipped past his lips. Retrieve. At a wave of his arms, the flames disappeared into his body in the blink of an eye. The endless flow of spiritual qi in the surrounding was quickly absorbed. Tier 5 Warrior Spirit, Breakthrough. The spiritual qi between heaven and earth formed a vacuum after it burned up in flames. As Li Lingtian retrieved the flames, he too absorbed the spiritual qi at an insane rate. He then circulated the heaven and earth reincarnation in his body to convert this endless flow of spiritual qi to true qi. Once the true qi reached the pinnacle of Tier 4, it was the moment of breakthrough. Hence, the powerful true qi made a quantum leap past Tier 4 to Tier 5 Warrior Spirit state. Just as his true qi depleted, he had achieved the peak of Tier 5 Warrior Spirit state. Hidden Dragon Isle was boundless and vast. No one knew exactly how huge it was. Hundreds of centuries had passed in Hidden Dragon Isle, but no one had been able to uncover the isle in its entirety. Although 10,000 warriors scrambled in when it opened once every 100 years, not many medicinal supplies and demonic beasts were brought out. On the contrary, the quality of the herbs became better over the years, and the demonic beasts had grown stronger. Second-tier demonic beasts roamed everywhere, while third-tier demonic beasts were a common sight. Around a usually quiet lake of 30 miles in size, gathered several hundred great warriors. These warriors were at least a Tier 6 or 7 warrior spirit. There were also many Tier 9 warrior spirits and a handful of warrior kings. Yao Tianxiong, so you're saying that Divine Dragon Palace is here? Zhou Tianjiao gazed at the 30-mile-sized lake. With no hint of activity, it was peaceful and quiet at the lake. He was puzzled at the absence of Divine Dragon Palace. That's right. Look at how the 4 mountains surrounding this lake and the size of this lake. Doesn't it resemble the map? Are you doubting the sect leader? Taking a look around with a watchful eye, Yao Tianxiong answered with confidence before he turned his gaze to Zhou Tianjiao and other warriors. He darted a sharp stare at Zhou Tianjiao. Sect leader Nangong would not become a warrior emperor had he not entered Hidden Dragon Isle the last time. There should be a number of people who are aware of Divine Dragon Palace's location. Look at them, bursting with confidence. Zhou Tianjiao replied without a care in the world. Many knew of Divine Palace in Hidden Dragon Isle, but none had gained access to the palace before. The real treasure of Hidden Dragon Isle was inside Divine Dragon Palace. Since they could not infiltrate the palace, they could only search the perimeters for medicinal supply, while they faced the attacks of high-level demonic beasts. Both of them were warrior kings, super geniuses of the Tianjin Empire, who had become warrior king powerhouses before the age of 30. While the duo was in conversation, countless warriors by the lake felt a throb that stirred a discussion amongst them. As they looked up to the sky, they saw a large airship approaching in a swoosh. Chapter 47 Chapter 47 Killing a Warrior King. Chapter 47 Killing a Warrior King. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Is there anyone who would like to enter Divine Dragon Palace? If you wish to gain access into Divine Dragon Palace, we should open the gate together. Don't even dream about taking advantage. Take your pick between opening Divine Dragon Palace's gate or get lost. Or else. In a flash, Tian Wuji slapped a magical spell on his body, and he was immediately suspended in the air. Darting a sharp gaze around, Tian Wuji shouted. That's right, we should team up to open Divine Dragon Palace's gate to get inside or leave us be. Yao Tianxiong too stood up. As a warrior of Tianjin Empire, even if he did not see eye to eye with Tian Wuji, the second prince, he should not bring shame to Tianjin Empire. For a moment, 6 warrior kings of Tianjin Empire stood up, followed by warrior kings of the Southern Empire and Northern Dusk Empire. Warriors of every empire stood behind the warrior kings. They were either Tier 9 peak imperfection warrior spirits or those in possession of treasures. Sky Dragon Empire? Are you the only one this time? Soon masters of 4 empires split up. the representatives of the four mysterious superclans, Duanmu, Shangguan, Dongfang, and Baiming were all warrior king powerhouses. However, as part of the Eastern Spirit Greenland's four great empires, Sky Dragon Empire only had Zhou Qingqing, a woman as a warrior king. Behind her stood 6 Tier 9 warrior spirits, and one of them was Dongfang Qingyu. The masters snickered at Sky Dragon Empire's talents. In this dog-eat-dog world and as Sky Dragon Empire's supersect, not a single super disciple at the level of a warrior king was in sight. It's only me. Any objections? Zhou Qingqing's expression hardened. She was a genius disciple who represented Sky Dragon Empire at this time and place. In fact, there were only 8 of them from Sky Dragon Empire, while the other empires had dozens of survivors, including 7 to 8 warrior kings at least. The threats from Tian Wuji and Yao Tianxiong brought forward gifted warriors, who wished to enter Divine Dragon Palace, to the lakeside. There were about 300 of them. No objections. However, if Sky Dragon Empire wants to gain access to Divine Dragon Palace, you're only entitled to a limited amount of resources inside. Southern Empire's Bei Ao blurted coldly. Although nobody was aware of the number of treasures inside, it would be strange not to take advantage of the weak Sky Dragon Empire by setting a limit. Haha, that's right. You're the only ones from Sky Dragon Empire. You won't be enough to pave the way for us. Sky Dragon Empire is really going downhill. I think it's better if you merge into our 3 great empires. There are no geniuses in Sky Dragon Empire, only trash. It seems like it will be the end of Sky Dragon Empire after this. Too. The super geniuses by the lakeside roared with laughter, leaving Zhou Qingqing's team in rage. Nevertheless, it was not the right place or time to step on these people's toes. No one from the outside would know if they were to face massacre here. Hundreds and thousands of warriors afar joined in mocking Sky Dragon Empire, but no one from Sky Dragon Empire dared to voice out. In the law of the jungle, retaliation without the ability to fight back was a surefire road to hell. You're not saying a word, so I take that you agree to it, Tian Wuji commented arrogantly. Now, Tianjin Empire had one less rival. Sky Dragon Empire could simply be disregarded. Tian Wuji, don't cross the line. Red and blue in the face, Dongfang Qingyu's body quivered. He was on the verge of running amok. Haha, Dongfang Qingyu, as a Tier 6 warrior spirit, you sure have the balls to butt in. I'll let you rest eternally if you don't shut up. Darting a stare at Dongfang Qingyu, Bei Ao surged his body vigor and sent his powerful demonic energy to press down onto Dongfang Qingyu's chest. Tui! Dongfang Qingyu spat a mouthful of blood before he collapsed to the ground. His face was as white as a sheet. 10,000 demon sex warriors were feeling right at home amidst this astounding demonic energy. Caught in a fortuitous opportunity, this warrior king powerhouse had struck his repression and wounded Dongfang Qingyu. Bei Ao, kneel before me. A faint voice was heard. Although the tone sounded indolent, many warriors were dumbfounded at such an occasion. Bei Ao was a warrior king, a Tier 2 warrior king. Moreover, the repression coming from the demonic energy had further pushed his Tier 2 warrior king state to Tier 3. With these few empires and mysterious clans occupying the lakeside, who would dare challenge a warrior king? Following the statement, a youth in white emerged within everyone's sight and they were taken aback. Without taking any measures, a Tier 5 warrior spirit eased his way into the demonic energy's repression and had the guts to provoke Bei Ao, a warrior king. Junior Brotherly. Junior Brotherly. It's him. Junior Brotherly, get out. Many of whom recognized Li Lingtian were taken by surprise. Realizing that it was Li Lingtian, Dongfang Qingyu immediately told him to leave, knowing that he would not survive against these warrior kings. Don't even think about escaping. Your only choice is to leave this place dead for trying my patience, Bei Ao exclaimed with a dirty look on his face. How could a Tier 5 warrior spirit trash command him to get down on his knees? Moreover, Li Lingtian had insulted him in front of so many super geniuses. I told you to kneel. Are you mother * king deaf or dumb? Do you understand the words coming out of my mouth? Li Lingtian trod step by step ahead until he reached the lakeside. His cold eyes were fixated on Bei Ao. He deserved death for harming a Skycloud sect disciple. He would not be bothered if it were anything else. However, bounds were overstepped when the empires of Eastern Spirit Greenland made a mockery out of Sky Dragon Empire. A powerhouse would never turn his back on his motherland. As a young man of the 21st century, even though he was without cash, looks, or love, he was patriotic. No shame should be put upon weaker nations. This was a matter of principle. Regardless of the circumstance, he would not stand by his nation to be insulted. Although Sky Dragon Empire did not have much of a relationship with him, he had transmigrated to this empire after all. Sky Dragon Empire was his home. What use was his cultivation if he were to sit on the sidelines and watch his empire suffer affront? Huh! The crowd burst into an uproar. The warriors were at a loss to see a useless Tier 5 warrior spirit of Sky Dragon Empire boldly challenge and fling abuse at a warrior king. Rah! I will tear you apart today, or my name isn't Bao. Blowing a fuse, Bao circulated his demonic energy. Amid the repression from the demonic energy, disciples of 10,000 demon sect were able to easily unleash skills like duck to water. As a horrifying vigor rose steeply, Bao pounced at Li Lingtian like a wild beast. The way he saw it, one easy strike should take out this Tier 5 warrior spirit trash. I told you to kneel, you better listen. Watching as a tall and sturdy figure pounced over with an air of ripping vigor, Li Lingtian sneered at the vicious attack coming his way. Warriors who were staring at Li Lingtian and Bao from afar had foreseen the outcome. The Tier 5 warrior spirit Li Lingtian would be torn apart and meet his end. Countless powerhouses held in contempt of Li Lingtian's pretentious attitude, yet no one realized the change in Li Lingtian's vigor. As a silver glow flickered in air, two blood-curdling screams echoed throughout the land. For one to let out such a wail, the pain inflicted must be to a certain degree. Wham! Following a dull crash, Bao's sturdy frame crash-landed in front of Li Lingtian. However, Li Lingtian remained unscathed while Bao fell on his knees before him. What is going on? Why did he listen? He kneeled. No way, a warrior king kneeling before a Tier 5 warrior spirit. Bao was going to kill Li Lingtian in a single move. How did he end up kneeling towards Li Lingtian? He had forced such amazing vigor yet ended up kneeling. For a moment, countless warriors were like fish out of water by the visual impact. The entire scene was so unusual that it took several seconds before they found their voices. Junior brother Li's earlier move was strange. He pulled his sword, but his speed surpassed the naked eye. He had crippled Bao with his blade aura. With surprise and admiration, Misty Pavilion's Lu Yi and another disciple exchanged their views in muffled voices. It was possible to cripple a warrior king in a single move. I told you to kneel, you should have listened earlier. Bam! Li Lingtian stared at Bao with a beaming grin. There was nothing in his hands as the purple-green sword was kept away. Deep down, he was pleasantly surprised by the might of this sword. Bao was crippled yet not a single strand of the onyx equipment's repression had leaked. Li Lingtian then raised his arm and unleashed his flaming divine fist before he pulled a punch at Bao. Bao, a 10,000 demon sect warrior king equipped with great defense, was single-handedly burnt to crisps in the face of a flaming divine first in its conception. Strong defense, and yet this is all you can do? What garbage! Senior brother Dongfang, take a step back. Leave this to me. Li Lingtian replied indifferently while he curled his lip at the scorched Bao in a distance. He drew near Dongfang Qingyu and handed 2 10,000 spirit pills to him. Junior brother, be careful. I am incompetent and have let down Sky Cloud sect. With gratitude, Dongfang Qingyu accepted the pills and walked out. He had witnessed Li Lingtian's ability. If Li Lingtian was able to prevail over Duan Muqing, a Tier 6 warrior spirit when he was a mere Tier 9 warrior, what was he now that he became a Tier 6 warrior spirit? The impeccable advancement of Li Lingtian's cultivation was a testament to his menacing competence. All of you here, is there anyone else who is unwilling to accept this? Even if you refuse to accept, your only choice is to sit and take it. Li Lingtian waited until Dongfang Qingyu left before he turned to the 10,000 demon sect's masters. He then swept a glance over to the powerhouses by the lake until finally, his gaze fell on Tian Wujian. Hiss! The crowd broke out into another uproar. Not only had he crippled Bei Ao in a single move, using the trashiest flaming divine fist to take down Bei Ao, but now he was making waves with all the powerhouses. The world had gone mad. Although this man had asked whether anyone remained defiant, they had to hold it in even if one refused to accept the result. This was blatant tyranny. Chapter 48 Chapter 48 Thousand Shadows of Fluttering Flowers. Chapter 48 Thousand Shadows of Fluttering Flowers. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Li Lingtian, you have crossed the line, Shuntian of Tianjin Empire's divine sword sect blurted coldly. Li Lingtian had taken a dig at them in the presence of 20-odd warriors and over 100 powerhouses. While others may not have had a clear look at how Li Lingtian defeated Bei Ao, Shuntian saw it with his own eyes. For Li Lingtian to cripple a warrior king with a sword, it stirred a battle intent within him. The majority of disciples in Divine Sword Sect were proficient in swordsmanship due to the powerful might that was driven by sword cultivation. It could be said that rarely anyone of the same tier was a match to these disciples. Having seen Li Lingtian demonstrate his sword technique, Shuntian now wished to experience his technique firsthand. As a Tier 2 warrior king equipped with Divine Sword Sect's Annihilation Sword, he thought little of Li Lingtian, a mere warrior spirit disciple. Crossed the line. Did it occur to you that you've crossed the line when you humiliated my Sky Dragon Empire? If I have indeed crossed the line and got on your nerves, I can only apologize, but let me say this. Yes, I crossed the line, so come bite me, Li Lingtian replied dully. The calm look on his face had the warriors from Sky Dragon Empire hang their heads low in shame. His continued statement left many warriors thinking that Li Lingtian was backing down and looking for an out. However, it had never occurred to them that he would aggravate the situation. Whoa! The warriors may be gobsmacked, but the girls from Misty Pavilion, including Lu Yi, burst into chuckles by this junior brother's humor. Yet in the face of countless masters, Li Lingtian remained collected. Fine, very good. Shuntian smirked out of rage. He surged his bodily vigor, and at the extent of his arm, a 3-foot-long sword emerged. A fierce blade aura immediately hovered over the sword. As the domineering blade aura soared upwards, the sword emitted an annihilating intent. Tyrannical Dragon Sword Technique's Annihilation Form. With rage burning in his eyes, Shuntian swung his sword, causing a tremble in the air. As a powerful blade glare was sliced down towards Li Lingtian, many masters on site were ruffled by this luminous light. A Tier 2 warrior king could barely withstand the terrifying force from a warrior king's sword, let alone a Tier 5 warrior spirit. Although the incoming blade glare was within a 5-yard distance from Li Lingtian, he remained still. This left many others taken aback by his reaction, as they assumed that Li Lingtian was scared stiff. Where was the same person who crippled Bei Ao in a single move? Why was he staring blankly at the blade glare? You think you're worthy of using a sword before me? Vast obscure extermination, die. Following a calm voice, Li Lingtian stretched his arm and unleashed an astonishing repression in an instant. At the same time, the foot-long purple-green sword in his hand released a domineering repression. An onyx equipment. A mediocre onyx equipment. Countless powerhouses gasped upon detecting the purple-green sword's repression. A spiritual equipment was considered quite domineering, yet this Sky Cloud Sect's Tier 5 warrior spirit disciple brought out an onyx equipment. While various powerhouses were caught by surprise, Li Lingtian's purple-green sword sliced through the air. The atmosphere turned rather unusual as a vast obscure extermination chi spread through the air and swiftly headed towards Shuntian's blade glare in the form of countless sword shreds. Fizz 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 fizz. There were no explosions, only subtle noises as these sword shreds quickly corroded the mighty blade glare to nothingness. These sword shreds then continued its journey to Shuntian. Sword shield. Shuntian was shocked. His tyrannical dragon sword technique proved a great force and was a top-rate skill in Divine Sword Sect. It had never crossed his mind that his warrior king state combined with his onyx tier skill would be abolished by a Tier 5 warrior spirit disciple. It took great force for a blade aura to transform into shreds. Even a divine sword sex master could barely achieve such a feat. Since he was well aware of the shredded blade aura's might, Shen Tian dared not take any chances. So he drew his sword and soon a sword screen emerged. Swish swish, swish swish. Amid the collision between the sword shred and sword screen, many warriors stared blankly at Li Lingtian and Shan Tian. With both of them demonstrating such sword techniques, it became these warriors' primary experience in witnessing the impact coming from sword techniques. Thousand shadows of fluttering flowers die. Li Lingtian was brewing with killing intent. The vast obscure extermination was incapable of finishing Shan Tian, a warrior king, and since the boat was already rocked, Shan Tian had to be wiped out in an attempt to nip in the bud. At a casual swing of the purple-green sword in his hand, countless blade auras burst out in a radiant eruption. These hundreds and thousands of fallen leaves-like blade auras were a force to be reckoned with altogether. Tyrannical dragon sword technique's invincible form. Shen Tian felt as though he had shot himself in the foot. This warrior spirit disciple was so strong that his sword shield could only be subjected to defense. At the sight of his opponent's crushing blow, Shen Tian was overwhelmed with terror. This feeling he had was as though he was faced with a warrior ascendant. So Shen Tian circulated the true qi from his whole body before he drew his sword to numerous domineering blade aura. Immediately, these blade auras came into blows with Li Lingtian's thousand shadows of fluttering flowers. Bam! The astounding demonic energy's repression was ripped apart by the explosion. As Li Lingtian's body swayed, he quickly circulated his breeze technique and retreated a few steps until he forced a secured footing. Ah! Tui! Following a loud cry, Shen Tian spat out a mouthful of blood. His body was hurled up to the sky before it slammed down on the ground. With that, the colliding blade auras gradually receded. Dozens of blade auras had penetrated Shen Tian's attack and pierced through his heart. He was long gone. The lakeside was pin-drop silent as everyone held their breaths. A Sky Cloud Sex warrior spirit disciple had slaughtered 2 warrior king powerhouses in succession. There's finally some peace and quiet. It's time all of you put your heads together to think of a way to open Divine Dragon Palace's gate. Li Lingtian's voice broke the lake's silence and pulled many warriors back to reality. In contrast to Li Lingtian's indifference, they were all quivering in the knees. This young man was a terrifying existence indeed. Junior brotherly. Junior brotherly. Li Lingtian then walked towards the warriors of Sky Dragon Empire. When he arrived, even Zhou Qingqing, who was a warrior king, nodded in greeting. The other warriors greeted Li Lingtian as well, to which he nodded in a polite response. He then closed his eyes and did not say a word. What a powerful attack! A warrior king was killed in a single move. He's going to be in trouble for killing Divine Sword Sex Genius Disciple. Sky Cloud Sect will suffer Divine Sword Sex crushing blow. Shush, at least no one can defeat him here. For a moment, many warriors whispered in discussions. Although the voices were soft, Li Lingtian heard them all. He smirked inwardly. The fact that he was bold enough to kill a genius of Divine Sword Sect was evidence that he was not afraid of Divine Sword Sect. Let's begin by figuring a way to break the gate. Otherwise, our true qi would be exhausted before we get in. Death will be waiting for us then. Tian Wuji took a glance at Li Lingtian. He was not going to be hasty by striking Li Lingtian. Although he thought nothing of Li Lingtian, a Tier 5 warrior spirit, he should refrain from stepping on anyone's toes with his enemies lurking around. The commanding tone prompted every warrior on site to crack their heads on opening this gate. Only by breaking through this gate could they enter Divine Dragon Palace. Make way, let me take a look. A young man walked out and strode forward. Many warriors did not say a word at the appearance of this youth. This was the super genius of Southern Empire's 9 Alps. 9 Alps was known to all for its powerful formation teachings, and they were an unrivaled presence of such in the Eastern Spirit Greenland. There was no one more authoritative than him here. Han Zhong hid his glee as he cast his gaze on numerous warriors who were in line and standing aside. Here, he was only considered below average in terms of cultivation level as a Tier 6 warrior spirit. Nevertheless, he reigned supreme in the way of formation. Chapter 49 Chapter 49 Extortion. Chapter 49 Extortion. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Heavenly Mystery Unravel. Han Zhong carefully examined Divine Dragon Palace's gate. With a constant change of expression on his face, it was obvious he did not know where to begin with this gate. After a moment's wait, Han Zhong realized that many masters behind him had turned impatient. Hence, he swung his arms furiously and wielding a disc before spell after spells were cast over it. Suddenly, the foot-long disc emitted a radiant glow that had a hint of mystery to it which caused some of the warrior kings behind to gasp in admiration. Idiot way to put on a show. Li Lingtian smirked at the sight of Han Zhong dabbling about the disc. Only he knew the way to open the gate. Others were delusional to think they could open it. What did you say? At the sound of Li Lingtian's voice, numerous warriors turned their gaze to him. They were about to blow their top but held it in when they noticed that it was Li Lingtian. I said he can't open this gate. He's merely trying to find himself an out. Li Lingtian answered in a flat tone while his gaze drifted upwards. The demonic energy's repression was thinning in the atmosphere. By the looks of it, the trip to Hidden Dragon Isle would be in vain if the gate could not be opened. Wham! Poof! As soon as Li Lingtian said that, the disc in Han Zhong's hands fired a radiance towards the gate. Then at the sound of an explosion, the gate was enveloped in a giant light barrier that repelled the disc's radiance. Han Zhong was physically blown away by the repelling force. It tossed him 100 yards away before he collapsed onto the ground like a dead pig. By the sheer stillness, it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Isn't there anyone who can open the gate? Our efforts will be in vain if we can't enter Divine Dragon Palace in 10 minutes, Li Lingtian shouted with his eyes fixed on Han Zhong afar. Li Lingtian was not going to give it in just yet. Even if he knew the way in, he was not going to let these guys have it the easy way. What did you say? In vain. Isn't Divine Dragon Palace here? Puzzled, the few warrior kings stared at Li Lingtian. Although Li Lingtian was only a warrior spirit disciple, no one dared to treat him like one. Are you blind? Can't you sense the weakening of demonic energy's repression? This means that Divine Dragon Palace is about to disappear. Li Lingtian answered with disdain as he pointed towards the sky. Compared to the beginning, the current repression had declined by a whole lot. After listening to Li Lingtian's statement, the warriors who had retreated 3 miles away were instantly intrigued. Although this meant that they would now be able to withstand the repression that was on a decline, they were held back by the sight of the warrior kings and first-rate masters. Is there anyone else who can open this gate? Otherwise, we just went on a wild goose chase. Anxious Tianwuji and Xionghao both cried out. Since they were both warrior kings, they could sense the change in the atmosphere. They had waited for a long time yet no one spoke up. This was because no one dared to volunteer after Han Zhong. The formation master was thrown back by the impact. Garbage, a bunch of garbage. I'll do it then. Grinning inside, Li Lingtian took large strides forward and stopped 10 yards in front of Divine Dragon Palace. He stood erected on a spiritual equipment. You can open this gate. Well, hurry up then. Tianwuji and Xionghao were dumbfounded to see Li Lingtian come forth. Sure, Li Lingtian had skills, but it was a different story in dealing with the gate. I can open this gate, but... Li Lingtian chuckled at the 300-odd warriors, and his eyes revealed slight mischief. But what? Get straight to the point. After opening this gate, you'll be the first to enter. They lost their patience at Li Lingtian's conditions. However, it was not the time to get on Li Lingtian's bad side. Putting his ability aside, only Li Lingtian was the only one who came forth when no one volunteered to open the gate. I can open this gate for you, but those who wish to enter Divine Dragon Palace are required to pay 100,000 spiritual stones, or else I won't bother wasting my breath. Li Lingtian may be speaking in an indifferent tone, but the words coming from his mouth left countless warriors gobsmacked. Fuck that, it's daylight robbery. 100,000 spiritual stones. Do you think spiritual stones are plain rocks? You have gone mad thinking about spiritual stones. 100,000 spiritual stones. That's enough to buy out every premium spiritual equipment. For a moment, many gasped in exclamation. 100,000 spiritual stones were the annual income of a small-scale sect. An inner sect disciple of Skycloud sect only received 100 spiritual stones on a monthly basis. Even for an inner sect disciple, 100,000 spiritual stones required the accumulation of 100 years without deduction on food and other usages. Nevertheless, those present on site were geniuses of the Eastern Spirit Greenland supersects and clans. Hence, they were never short of spiritual stones. Li Lingtian owed it to himself to take the chance in extorting them. Junior brother Li has lost his mind. He's too cool. He must be the first to charge everyone spiritual stones. 100,000 spiritual stones. There are over 300 of us here. Our Misty Pavilion doesn't possess that much even in a year. Many disciples from Sky Dragon Empire were surprised and stunned. A Tier 5 warrior spirit was extorting countless masters for spiritual stones. He sure had the guts. You have 10 seconds to think it over. I'll leave once the 10 seconds are up and I won't be opening the gate then. Li Lingtian maintained an indifferent attitude, unconcerned of the dirty looks he was receiving from these super masters. Based on his 21st century wisdom and understanding of human behavior, he was able to grasp the mentality of these super geniuses. Fine, 100,000, I'll give it to you. 100,000. I'm not short of spiritual stones, consider it a reward. My Tianjin Empire has plenty of spiritual stones. I'll give you 100,000. My Northern Dusk Empire is never lacking in spiritual stones. Come on, hand over the spiritual stones if you want to enter. I'll kill anyone who is holding us back. Speechless, Xiong Hao shot a menacing look at Li Lingtian. He was the first to take a stand and tossed 100,000 spiritual stones to Li Lingtian. The rest of the warriors then followed suit, forking out their spiritual stones reluctantly. Since the supersects, mysterious clans, and imperial prince were loaded, they could easily afford 100,000 spiritual stones. Moreover, anyone who entered Hidden Dragon Isle was familiar with slaughtering others for their goods. Take your time one by one. I'm not in a hurry. Ignoring these guys who were missing out yet still tried to keep up appearances, Li Lingtian retrieved the large number of spiritual stones and kept them in his storage sack. In the distance, Lui's group remained appalled. It had never crossed their minds that a disciple of Sky Dragon Empire would make a fool out of these arrogant supermasters. Humph, I've given you the spiritual stones now, so if you can't open this gate, I'll be the first to kill you. You must be the one who killed my divine sword sex Su Tian. Watch your back, Yan Ming responded coldly. He was incredibly surprised to find Su Tian dead, but he immediately connected the dots when he saw Li Lingtian unleash the domineering sword technique. It was the doing of this young man. Not bad, you're all rich. I've never seen this many spiritual stones. Li Lingtian looked at the dozen storage sacks in front of him that were all filled to the brim with spiritual stones. Over 36 million spiritual stones. He would not gain as much even in Skycloud sect in a year. 10 seconds? 100 seconds had passed. Are you playing us a fool? Li Lingtian's laid-back demeanor struck a thought in the few warrior kings. Li Lingtian mentioned from the start that the gate would not be opened after 10 seconds, yet over 100 seconds had passed. Did he just toy with them? I mean it when I said I can open it, but... Li Lingtian planned it out in his mind. He should make a run for it if he failed to open the gate later. Otherwise, he would be dead meat in the face of all these super masters. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.